All right, we're going to try it one more time. The Joint Interim Committee, Standing Committee on Government Affairs will come to order. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
Senator Krasner.
Here.
Senator Neal.
Here.
Assemblymember Cole. Assemblymember Considine.
Present.
Assemblymember Flanagan. Assemblymember Gurr.
Here.
Assemblymember Nguyen. And Chair Flores.
And I am present. Please let the record reflect all members are present with the exception of Assemblymember Nguyen. Please mark him as absent excused, and should he be able to join us a little bit later today, please mark him as present. We do have a quorum. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a very exciting meeting today. I hope we're going to have some great conversations today. I appreciate all of you being here. A couple of things. First of all, I do want to recognize former Senator Parks and former Commissioner Christie, who are joining us today. Thank you for being here. Obviously, our members of law enforcement, thank you for the work you do, and thank you for joining us today in this very important conversation. But lastly, and equally as important, our students who are joining us, who will be presenting some of the very important topics for today. Folks, just so you all know, particularly those of you who have any particular interest in the interim standing committee kind of taking on a conversation, I encourage you to please submit public comment and or reach out directly to the committee, particularly those of you who had a bill that went through government affairs and the policy moves, but then there may have been some other holdup on the back end. The two conversations that we're going to be really focusing on today are exactly that. There are conversations that went through the government affairs, the policy move, there was bipartisan support, there's tension left and right. Some of it made it all the way across to the governor's desk with the signature, some of it did not. But this is an opportunity for us to continue that work. We know sometimes legislation takes 2 or 3 different cycles, and that's absolutely okay. And I want to make sure that we create a platform for all of you to be able to continue that work and utilize the committee as you see fit, as it is your committee. With that, well, the first item on the agenda is public comment. We encourage you to provide public comment. We ask that you limit your public comment to 2 minutes, that you remain respectful, and that public comment be specific to subjects that fall within the general purview of this committee. If for whatever reason your testimony is longer than 2 minutes, we ask that you please submit your testimony in writing so that it can get the full breadth of your concerns and or the issue you want to be raised so that it becomes part of the record. We'll start off with those wishing to provide public comment either in Las Vegas or Carson City. If you could please make your way forward and occupy one of the available seats. I do see some folk joining us in Las Vegas. I don't believe we have anybody at this time in Carson City. For those of you who are joining us over Zoom, please know that you can also provide public comment via phone. And I just wanted to provide the phone number in which you can call us. Is that the 775 number here, 684? For those of you hoping, excuse me. I see it. For those of you wishing to join us over the phone for public comment, you can call 775-684-6990. Again, you can call there if you have any issues, or you can call our direct 1-888-475-4499 number. Again, 888-475-4499. But if you have any issues, you can call the 775-684-6990 number. With that, we do have folk here in Las Vegas. Whoever wishes to go first, welcome.
Item 3, do you want us now or under public comment?
No, I think, well, actually,
Whatever's easiest, so just.
I think it's fine. If,
Okay.
if you'd like to do it now no issue. Please do.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Hector Ariola, and I'm the Policy Fellow with the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition. And the Nevada Environmental Justice Coalition is here to respectfully request that the Joint Interim's Standing Committee on Government Affairs receives presentations from local jurisdictions on their heat mitigation strategy as required under Assembly Bill 96 from the 83rd Legislative Session. With AB 96 set to take effect on July 1st, it is important for this committee to understand how local jurisdictions are preparing for implementations and prioritizing extreme heat mitigation in their updated master plan. These presentations will provide valuable insight in their readiness, coordination, and progress towards reducing urban heat islands. We hope these discussions can highlight jurisdictions' plans to expand tree canopies, especially in neighborhoods with historic disinvestments or underinvestments and areas most vulnerable to extreme heat. It will be helpful to learn whether the selected tree species are drought tolerant and capable of long-term survival with minimal water usage. We encourage the committee to ask the jurisdiction's representatives if their free tree giveaways for residents are targeted specific zip codes, and if their programs include community education on proper tree planting, as well as maintenance to improve the tree survival rates. Understanding these on-the-ground practices is essential for the committee to identify gaps, evaluate successful approaches, and ensure that the public investment in our urban tree canopies are both equitable and resilient. Thank you for your time and your continued leadership on these critical environmental and public health issues. Thank you.
And we also received your written testimony, so we appreciate that. That's been uploaded, members, for all of you to be able to see that. Thank you. Please.
Chris Giunkiliani. I'm here to testify in support of item 3 regarding making county commissioners full-time. I have wanted that since I was elected and ran in 2007. I took an unpaid leave of absence for teaching after trying to do both jobs. There are many reasons for this change in addition to the salary increase. I think you can live on 121 grand a year. Full-times makes electeds actually delve into public policy, have time to do the job, and more importantly, eliminate obvious conflicts of interest. That's a huge area in my mind. You want to minimize the conflicts of interest. I also ask that as you consider this, include city councils in the urban areas for both charter and general law cities. Perhaps set that automatically, once their salaries hit 100,000 in statute, that they roll over into full-time as well. The larger city councils are close to the county commission wages at this point. As you know, it's easier when writing law to include the groups rather than having to open up the statute once again. This way they would be on notice. Also, if commissioners and council members have outside employment, you'd need language to make sure the employer grants them leave of absence without pay. Those that are self-employed should cease their business. They can hide behind an LLC or a consulting job and appear before electeds, but we don't know who their clients are, nor if there's potential conflicts of interest or a lack of disclosure. Perhaps you might explore putting into additional training requirements, not just ethics, like you do for school trustees, classes on finance, budgeting, managing, evaluating staff. I also think the full-time requirement would help stop drive-by participation by some electeds. Most of them are on several governing bodies, but tend to come in, get briefed, vote, and leave. This doesn't allow for time for policymaking, gaining knowledge of the issues, creating the ability to draft worthwhile ordinances which are intended to benefit the community. There are many boards and commissions. I won't read them all, I'll submit them, but there are 2 pages worth of commissions and boards, in addition to city council, county commission, et cetera, that they are required to participate in. The commissioners and council members have varied roles that oversee executive, legislative, and judicial branches. They oversee budgets as large as the state of Nevada's. They make laws via directing staff. They coordinate between muni government and county government. They hold show cause hearings and other ministerial issues. It's time to professionalize the position, eliminate conflicts of interest, and help direct more thoughtful decisions. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. For the record, David Parks, as you're probably well aware, I served for many years as chair of the Senate and Assembly Government Affairs Committees. And the issue of salaries was a constant issue that had come up, and I was in the thick of that time. I'd like to support the comments that my former colleague, Commissioner June Kiliani, just made, and certainly support for the bill. And I'd like to offer my services as might be desired. Thank you for the privilege of the comments. Thank you.
And thank you both for joining us again. Is there anybody else wishing to join us either in Carson City or Las Vegas for public comment? As a reminder, there will be a second opportunity at the end of the evening today for the second batch of public comment. I see nobody coming forward. We'll go to the phone lines. Do we have anybody wishing to join us over the phone?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to provide public comment, please press *9.
Good afternoon. My name is Ellen Gifford, E-L-L-E-N, G as in George, I, double F as in Frank, O-R-D as in David. I would like to speak about SB 156. Should I do that now? I don't see it on the agenda. Should I do that now?
Yes, please proceed. This is an appropriate time to bring it up. Please do.
All right, thank you. One moment. When SB 156 was introduced last year, the students who gave testimony described the horrors of the shooting at their school in December of 2023. They were passionate about initiating a project that researched ways to reduce gun violence. The bill's sponsor said there were many different silos of research on gun violence focused on gangs, mental health issues, law enforcement, etc. He believed the bill would create one space where all those silos could come together to find solutions. The bill proposed that this project be led by a special counsel in the Attorney General's office. It further provided that the project would be funded by outside organizations. Note that the common definition of an AG special counsel is someone who investigates and prosecutes, and nowhere in NRS Chapter 228 is there any mention of possible outside funding for AG activities. The bill had strong support, but there was equally strong opposition. While moving through the legislative process, amendments to the bill changed from the Attorney General hiring a special counsel expressly for this project to using an existing special counsel whose current project was ending. When it reached the governor's office, it was vetoed. Concurrently, his memorandum documented the governor's agreement that gun violence must be reduced, but a special counsel in the Attorney General's office is not the right approach. Indeed, it is not. This bill would create yet another silo encumbered by bureaucracy, politics, and questionable funding activities. Perhaps the very best approach is to encourage those college students to initiate the project they were eager about and make it all happen on their own. What a wonderful learning experience. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Next caller wishing to join us.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Interim Committee. My name is Janine Hansen, and I am the State President of Nevada Families for Freedom. During the 2025 legislative session, we vigorously opposed SB 156. After listening to the sponsor and many hours of testimony in favor of the bill, we concluded that this bill would use tax dollars, grants, and donations, and the Attorney General's appointed special counsel to push an anti-Second Amendment agenda. In fact, we called it the Office of Anti-Second Amendment Propaganda, which is exactly what we think it would be used for. In the final version of SB 156 in Section 11, it says the special counsel may apply for gifts, grants, contributions, and other money from governmental, private agencies, affiliated associations for the purpose of carrying out the provisions of this bill. We know that anti-Second Amendment organizations like the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, Every Town for Gun Safety, funded by Bloomberg, Moms Demand Action, Giffords, the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, will be more than happy to provide money for the special counsel. We know that money talks, and by this means, these anti-Second Amendment organizations will control the agenda of the special counsel. We already have excellent evidence which tells us what stops gun violence. Restrictive gun laws do not stop criminals from having guns. When law-abiding citizens have guns, gun violence goes down. When many criminals are removed from our country, crime and gun violence goes down. No one was allowed to carry a gun at the Nevada campus, making it a gun-free zone, resulting in the murder of the professor there. Gun-free zones invite criminals who know that no one is there to stop their violence. For excellent evidence and that concealed carry holders do a better job stopping active shooters than police, I have provided a link to John Lott's article in the Federalist in my testimony. Thank you.
And members, we have received her testimony in writing. That should be uploaded and you should be able to access it. There's also the link that she alluded to at the very bottom that you can click and look at the report she provided. Thank you, Ms. Hanson, for joining us. Is there anybody else wishing to join us over the phone?
If you've recently joined the call and would like to participate in public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you recently joined, please press star 9.
Good afternoon. This is Lynn Chapman, and I'm the state treasurer of the Independent American Party. Mass killings have been happening for years, and not always with guns. This is in regards to SB 156. Quote, more than a dozen high-profile vehicle attacks on crowds have taken place in recent years, unquote. Holly Yan from CNN, January 5th, 2025. She stated this right after the New Orleans attack of January 1st, 2025. May 27th of 2025, quote, in the past 6 months alone, there have been 15 vehicle ramming attacks worldwide, not counting the latest in Liverpool killing 71 people, unquote. That's according to the National Transportation Security Center. And we also remember the vehicle bombing in Las Vegas. In May of 2023, in New York, a 15-year-old girl murdered 19 people. She set fire to a school dorm because the school took her phone away. So violence comes in all shapes and sizes and for many different reasons. Maybe we should look into attacking the real problem, which is crime, mental health, gangs, drugs, hate, and authorities turning their eyes away from criminal acts on our streets and colleges. These are the plagues of America today. So please stop attacking the law-abiding and their Second Amendment rights. Also, the taxpayers will end up paying because if it's government funded, that means it comes from the taxpayer. And to make us pay for yet another layer of bureaucracy with no accountability to the citizens is something we don't want. Thank you very much.
And thank you for joining us, Ms. Jackson. Do we have anybody else wishing to join us over the phone?
Chair, we have no additional callers for public comment at this time.
Thank you. And if anybody had any difficulty accessing our phone lines, please note that we will have another opportunity for public comment at the conclusion of the meeting. So you'll be able to do it then. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Members, as you may recall, Senator Daley was very instrumental in spearheading the conversations around Senate Bill 116. And in the NRS, there was also a request that a conversation come back to us for us to help provide some guidance and direction. So for that reason, we've invited Senator Daley to come back, provide a kind of a brief synopsis of what the work was done, where the conversations ended, and where we're hoping to move forward from here. So with that, Senator Daley, thank you for joining us from Carson City whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Skip Daley. I do represent Senate District 13. I did sponsor Senate Bill 116, got that passed, and the reason we're here today with the discussion is because I wanted to put have somebody else be looking at these two issues rather than just me. Quick just overview of Senate Bill 116, refresh everyone's memory, I hope. It really had two parts, three if you count bringing it to this committee during the interim. So you had the provisions where we reset the salary for all of the county elected positions. We reset that by giving or putting in the cost of living amount for the previous 8 years that they didn't get a raise, set a base salary at that level, and then said any of the elected officials should get 3% more than their highest paid subordinate. I learned last session, I didn't know that, but apparently in Article 4, Section 32 regarding county officers, the legislature in the state, Article 4 of the state constitution, the legislature is required to set the duties of those elected officers and the compensation. That's why that is in statute the way it is. And I think the structure that we have is set by the state. Any subordinate officers' pay is covered by the county commissioners anyway. They have to approve any increases that would trigger the 3% increase. LCB indicated and said, we think we're safe, that the legislature has set that amount, and any triggering event is a separate issue done by the county, but the state set that the trigger would go into place. We also allowed, just caveat on that, for a county to not have to pay that increase if they can't afford it, they can justify it. That was language that was previously in the statute, and we kept that. We also said that the county commission, if they want to, for instance, if there's a small county, they have a public administrator, they don't have any staff, just as an example, and they wanted to give an increase, that the county commission could give an increase above what's listed out. Well, it's not in the exact, the numbers are not in the statute anymore. They could give that increase, but that became the new base. So the state said, whatever action you may take in that regard to meet our constitutional duty is then required to remain the same per the state, the legislative duty to set the rate. So that's that part of it. I think that's working well from everything that I've heard from at least the north and the south counties. I haven't talked to too many in the rurals, but I've heard no complaints. The other part of that was the county commission salaries. That was also in statute. Previously to Senate Bill 116 going into effect, there was a 5% increase given each year for, I believe it was 5 years in the statute, but once it hit that 5% increase, it ended. And for 8 years, the legislature never did take it up again, and they were frozen in time. Washoe County at the time, 66,000 for county commissioners, and Clark County was 99,000. And I'll give a little more information on that, on how come that gap may have existed. Previously, when they set the 5% increases, they said whatever your salary was at the time, you get 5% for these 5 years, and then the legislature left it alone. So what we did in Senate Bill 116 was we reset the minimum salary for the county commissioners. We set Clark County at 121,000, so they went up 22,000 from their old number. We set Washoe County at 116,000. There's only a 5,000 difference there. That actually was a $50,000 increase, but they started lower. They got 5% increases, which kept them lower. The gap grew if you do the 5% based on two different salaries. So we wanted to get that back into alignment. Part of the reason for my reasoning to want to set the salaries a little bit higher, because is the second part of the discussion we're going to have today about making it a full-time position. If we're going to attract, retain, and get qualified, competent people that actually want to do the job, I think we have to pay them a fair wage. We picked some of those numbers based on as much information as I could get, but generally we kind of picked them at a number that felt reasonable. But it was, we did gather some numbers on what mid-level executives get paid in each of those counties. Interestingly enough, mid-level executives get paid higher in Washoe County than Clark from the information I saw, but interesting enough. On the rural counties, we did group those counties together by population a little bit, size of their commission a little bit, but then proximity to each other as well. I believe Story, Douglas, Carson, Lyon, I think those 4 or 5 counties all went up to 39,000. We're not looking to have those people be full-time because, in my opinion, 39,000 is not enough money to make a living off of. And they have much different duties depending on some of the smaller counties on what they have to do. So the part that brings us here on Senate Bill 116, I have ideas. I'm going to share some of those with you today on how we could move forward regarding increases in pay after the 3% for 5 years that's in the bill, and then whether or not we should make the county commission in the 2 large counties, Washoe and Clark, full-time positions. I lean that way. I believe we should. I also was not comfortable just saying 3% forever. There are some things there, and I didn't want to put it in the bill. I didn't want to take away from the bill potentially being passed. I didn't want that to be a fight to get this first step done. And I didn't want to be sitting there saying, I know everything and this is what it needs to be, which is why I'm bringing it in front of this committee in the interim so I can get more eyes on it, more people with ideas. We have a chance for the 2 counties that are involved on the full-time position to give their points of view at least a little bit. I understand there's not consistency among the existing or current county commissioners, but the legislature is going to get to decide this. I just wanted to have more people look at that. A little bit of information. So I did take the 121,000 for Clark County. I added the 3% for 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, that 121 goes up 19,000 to 140,272. The 116,000 at 3% for Washoe County for 5 years takes that up to 134,475. So as you can see, it went from a 5% difference to a $5,000 difference to a $6,000 difference. And over the course of time, you would grow that gap, which we saw in the 66 versus 99. I think the gap was grown by that percentage increase. So a couple of thoughts there on what we might want to do going forward. And I've thought about this several times. Maybe we want to use a cost of living increase per year, cap that cost of living. So if cost of living goes up 8%, well, you would cap that at a 2.5, something like that. You could do a cost of living increase at a little bit higher amount if you wanted to, or at the 2.5 every other year. You could take care of that percentage difference increase by limiting the difference between the 2 large counties. You'd have to deal with the small counties separately to say that that pay gap shouldn't be more than 10,000, and at that point there was a cost of living and the dollars came out to X, both of them would get that, so it never was larger than a $10,000 gap. I think that would be fair. So a variety of things to look at on what we would do going forward. I know Vince is here with NACO, and he told me every single day while we were doing Senate Bill 116, just get rid of the sunset on that 3%. And I said, keep dreaming is what I told him. I said, we're not going to do that. We're going to talk about it with more people than just you and me. So a lot of things that can be done there. We just want to look what's fair. We don't want to have this just go on and 15 years from now, the salary is $200,000. We're going, what are we doing paying them? That may be a fair wage at the time, but we don't know. That's why I wanted more people to look at it. In regard to the shifting gears now, in regard to making the county commission positions full-time, you saw testimony from former Commissioner Giuliani in Parks. I talked to a couple of different county commissioners, both north and south. I won't name any names, but there is several of the same concerns about conflict of interest. And let's just face it, that county commission position, if you're going to do it correctly, it's a full-time position. You meet twice a month, sometimes more often at least. I know when I spoke to the former chair of the county commission here in Washoe County, she was on 18 different committees Up here in the north, we have the Regional Transportation Commission, the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. You got housing, you got a variety of other commissions, councils, the TRPA committees. There's many, right? And if they're really going to put some time into that and delve into the policy and actually represent the people, if we're paying them enough money to have it be, if we're paying them full-time wages, we should make it a full-time position. That's my view. I'm going to push for that. I'm going to listen to what the committee says, but that's probably still going to be my view either way. And then how we would have to handle that would be anybody that's currently in the position, elected currently. I think it would be unfair to tell them, if you want to run again next term, you have to quit your other job. So those people, I think, would have to be grandfathered in. So any current county commissioner would be there, but anyone that files, if we do something next session to put that limit in, it wouldn't be until the 2028, maybe the 2030 election, where anybody that files then for those positions, if we have the new statute in place, they know what the deal is, they know that what the pay is, and they know that they have to take a leave of absence or close down their business or resign their employment with their other employer to take this now full-time position with the county as a county commissioner. Happy to answer any questions. One other comment, and I'll just make this real quick. So the Constitution does say that we're supposed to set the duties and compensation in Article 4, Section 32 of the state Constitution. I didn't find anything, maybe legal can help, Mr. Chair, give you some more information, but I couldn't find it. It does talk about the legislature setting up and authorizing setting the duties of the county commissioners in Article 4, Section 26, but it doesn't say anything about compensation. So I don't know if it has to be in statute. Apparently, one of the county people there was looking it up, is that the county commission pay got put into statute in like 1969, so it's been there for a long time. I think we should continue to have it set by the legislature for a variety of reasons. Not that I want to get into how legislative pay is set or any of that kind of stuff, but you get into that type of third rail question. If the county commissioners are going to set their own pay, they're never going to vote for it. Same thing with city councils and various things. So I think it's beneficial to have an outside entity like the legislature deciding and recommending what's fair and setting the county commission pay as well, although it may or may not be required by the Constitution. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know there are representatives from Clark County, County Commissioner, and from Washoe County, and someone from NACO. If they have comments, I would hope that you would allow them to give any of those comments. More information is better on those lines. I hope I gave a reasonably straightforward and easy to follow overview. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
And thank you for the recap and the conversation, and also for the work that you did during the session and leading up to the session. Obviously, it was a lot of work, and getting a lot of folk to try to agree on this conversation was difficult. So thank you. We'll start off with Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Daley, I guess the first question that I had after listening to your presentation is, do you believe that the Washoe County Commission is equal to the Clark County Commission? Because what came to mind was when I was up there in Luce District with Senator Taylor, and we did this backpack event in August after session. And I was asking her, hey, like, you know, why are we at the edge of a parking lot of a, you know, a closing supermarket? Do you not have money set aside, a pot of money set aside for your district to then go out and do community work? And she was like, no. And so I think that there are different advantages that have been created in the Clark County Commission that I don't feel exists at the Washoe. And so they're not equal to me. So they can't be seen as giving one, I guess, the same advantage when actually they don't even have the same benefit structure. in terms of staffing, pots of money of which you can go out and do, you know, designated things within your district. Like that, I don't know. This bothers me so much. But that's my first question. I don't think they're equal, so I don't want to treat them equally.
Skip Daly again for the record. Obviously, there are two different counties, so your question has many different facets on that. In relation to their power and authority and the duties that they have, that's been given by the legislature, in their counties, they're equal. They have the same jobs and duties. Are they equal in number? No. We have 5 here in Washoe County. You have 7 in Clark. Are they equal in number of people they represent? No. There's, I think, 300,000 versus like 100,000 rough numbers of people that they represent. I guess it's a matter of critical mass. When you get to a certain point where you're representing 100,000 people and the county has these various duties and boards and things to do, just because one's not exactly the same size as the other doesn't mean that the workload isn't substantially similar. We didn't make them equal. We brought them much closer together. And if you just go with the straight percentage, that gap will grow again as well. Each county's structure, they get the same structure, you know, duties, various things, but there are things that have evolved over time between the two counties and how they address various things, what different boards and things they're on. For instance, I mentioned the TRPA board that Washoe County has to represent, and Clark County doesn't have that. But I'm sure there are other boards in Clark County that we don't have, right? Libraries are set up different. There's a variety of things that are different. But the basic work on what they have to do for the county and the amount of work that they have once you get past that critical mass is comparable. Equal? Eye of the beholder. Exactly equal? No. Do I think Clark County deserved the $5,000 more that we've set the salary at? Yes. Did I think it needed to be the $33,000 that it was before? No, I didn't think that was exactly fair either. So I hope I answered your question. There's a lot of facets, a lot of ways they are equal, and a lot of ways they are not. But each county has their own history and the way things have evolved and how they've chosen to allocate their resources and the priorities that they've been able to do, and then, or lack of being able to do some priorities based on constraints that are outside, revenue issues.
Thank you.
I hope
for
that answers
Senator
your question.
Daly. Well, no, but that's okay.
Well, I did the best I could.
I know, but you went structural, and I was talking about benefits. And so, because this is how I see it, right? And I guess I'm gonna weigh in on this is my opinion about the county. They have full-time staff that help them do their job. They are elected, but they call staff at, the business licensing. They call staff in social services. Then they have their own chief of staff and personal staff that can go out and help them do the work that they need to do. So they're not always on. Staff is always on, and they get to take a break. So you want to turn them into full-time employees. You then mentioned that, this $200,000, you're not envisioning that they make it to $200,000, but if they're at 121, they're going to get there, right? And there's a big question on, is that effective use of taxpayer money for an elected who is surrounded by paid staff, who is doing the work for them? And I guess my bias, and I'm going to just put it out there, I know you're not trying to have the legislative argument, but the bias is coming from the fact, Senator Daly, that we sit up here and we do a poo load of work with no staff. And from your own words, you were like, nobody can survive off of 39,000. We don't even make that. And we're sitting here debating whether or not they should be full-time to prevent conflict of interest. The vote is what delivers the conflict of interest. They're still responsible to push the button and then on top of that get paid. I think that they're going to be, I mean, I know you're saying, oh, we'll get better candidates. I think we're going to get spoiled humans sitting there thinking I can do whatever I want because I'm also getting a paycheck and statute and I get to vote. That's crazy talk to me. Maybe I'm like, I'm watching, and there's some good people that are currently on the commission, but I also watch the encroachment of power, and it disturbs me on a million levels about what's going on. And so I can't separate it, right? I can't separate it, and I don't want to give more to entities that I feel at the Clark County level have been absorbing and encroaching power from the legislature. So I'm not really interested in giving them more money. I'm just putting that out there. I might as well just put it out there and then be quiet.
Skip Daly again for the record, and I'll try to respond. Thank you, Senator Neal. And a variety of different things, and not to be argumentative at all, but the county is going to pay them, the state's not. The state has to set the salary. With a 3% for the 5 years is in there, it can be frozen again at the end of 5 years if the legislature doesn't take any action. But if we're going to take action, what are we going to do? How much? How's it going to be? Maybe they'll eventually get to the 200,000, and then what is the timing and how does that match up with comparable pay for mid-level executives, if you will? Yes, they have staff, and I know the legislature doesn't. We're a much different body, different history, different structure, and I have told people before is, you know, and I don't take this the wrong ways, don't feel sorry for us at the legislature. We volunteered. Every one of us did, right? I'm just saying that if we want to get fair people to do the job, actually do the job, and we're going to have a full-time salary, which we do have now, I think it should be a full-time position so they can, you know, lean into that and actually do the work rather than a drive-by type of a deal and on that. And I know that's not going to satisfy you for that because I know you pretty well. But we can go back and forth some more if you'd like, or or we can stop there.
And please let the record reflect that Assemblymember Nguyen is present. And I think what Senator Neal is alluding to is that she wants to have a home rule conversation in this committee. And I think this committee is 1,000% open for that. I'm sure all the local jurisdictions are excited about that conversation. Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Flanagan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Daly, so nice to see you again. It's been a while. Having started in the space at Clark County, where I've been for 23 years, as a commission liaison, I understand very well, and thank you, Commissioner Christie, for sharing your comments earlier. The dynamic of the structure. And I am very concerned with the benefits being fair. So I have 2 points. One of those points is if this were to be considered, any consideration to using Clark County as a test environment, if it were to be considered, and I'm not saying I think it should or shouldn't, but you often allude to the fact that as legislators, we set the salary incremental increases, but then the burden is placed on the county. So it's almost presented as if you think it's okay to place the burden on the county, being that the largest burden will fall to my county, where my constituents live, where the county works very hard to provide a plethora of services to constituents. And then the additional absorption of cost and salary increases to Clark County is larger than it is to anybody else. And there always seems to feel like a dismissal of how large that responsibility can be because the state set in the rule and the county is absorbing the cost. So that concerns me because I don't think that it almost feels flip, and maybe you don't intend to. It just feels that way when you say it, as if there's not fair consideration to how that cost weighs on Clark County and what it then may cause us to have to sacrifice in services that we are providing to our constituents. And maybe that's not your intention. I know it's not. You're just stating the facts, but that's how it sounds and how it feels. There is quite a bit of staff to support commissioners in Clark County, but the benefits part, if Washoe County, per what Senator Neal has shared, they don't have the resources, creating full-time doesn't get them where you really want them to be. And even where Commissioner Chris G pointed out, the goal would be of getting them, which is allowing them to do work without a lot of distractions if they still aren't going to have a level playing field to do that work. If the county clerk is already stacked heavier in terms of the resources we're able to provide, the dollars we set aside to support commissioner community events, the staff that we give to those activities, if Washoe still isn't going to see that, making them part-time, making them full-time, versus allowing them to have the flexibility to do what they do with some staff support and then still have other options, and disclose those options as needed, I'm not sure that this is a full solution or necessarily a good start.
Skip Daly again for the record. So this is certainly not intended to be a Clark County versus Washoe County issue, and I don't believe that it is. As I said before, Article 4, Section 32 says that the legislature will set the pay for those elected positions. So whatever it is that we set it at, we also gave them some flexibility for the county commission to say if we can't afford it, they don't have to give them. But when they can't afford it, they have to go back up to that higher level. We also allowed each county commissioner, if they don't feel that it's fair or they want to take it, and they don't have to. They can say, no, I don't want the increase. Fact of the matter is, the increases are there. It's my knowledge everybody has taken them. So they are getting full-time equivalent pay. And it's not that I don't care that, oh, it's just the county going to pay it, so we don't care, here we go. That's the way the structure is set up from the Constitution down. So there's no other way to do it for the legislature. If we're going to set those salaries, we're going to set them. We've given the county flexibility for those considerations on that. If we're going to pay them anyway, should we have them be full-time or not is the question. Some of that other stuff is, and similar to Senator Neal's question on are they equal, there's different histories, different structures, different committees, but for the representation of their county, do they have the same duties as every other county? Yes. So I don't know if that answers your question or not. I think I understand where you're coming from. I wasn't trying to be putting burden on Clark County more than anything else, but most of the population and the revenue is bigger than it is in anywhere else in the state as well. I mean, you have more resources on that. But the structure automatically says the legislature is going to set it, and of course the county has always, since the beginning, had to pay it because it's their employees and their structure, and the county commissions were set up, and the county government is set up, and they have to fund their own county government, and that's not going to change, I can't imagine.
Follow-up, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Daly. They are receiving full-time pay in both counties. We've, voted SB 116 passed. So I'm not sure yet that I'm clear on the full benefit to just saying that it's full-time. They have the pay. So if the counties can't find the resources, it's just going to be a title change and everything else would be the same. So I don't know if we're going to get where you're hoping to go, but I'll listen some more.
Again, Skip Daly for the record. I don't think that it will not be the same. If the county is in that degree of stress, and they say they're not going to do that, the position would still be full-time. So anyone that would run, if this went into place after it's in place, would know what the score is. And they know that that's a potential issue if the county can't afford it. If the county can't afford it, we want them to have their focus full-time on county's work, not, oh, I got to take this day and miss council meetings, or I can't go to this other committee meeting that I should go to and give that focus and develop that policy because I have to, go do real estate or whatever the heck it might be, right? So I guess, if, the committee's going to make a recommendation, I'm trying to get people some information. I don't believe there's consensus on either county commission. There is, and that's why we're having this discussion. I believe that it should be full-time with the increase, and to eliminate conflicts of interest and get those elected officials to actually focus on the job they ran for, rather than having it be a title for them to give part-time effort. And that's, I've seen some people do amazing work, both north and south, treat it as a full-time job, even with the less pay, be very effective at what they do. And I've seen other people just give it the, yeah, if I can make it, I'll make it. I'm going to, if I miss too many meetings, I'm going to get reprimand, whatever. So they're putting in the minimal effort. And that's what I'm trying to get away from. And then any conflict of interest as well.
Any follow-ups?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One more comment or question, Senator Daly, that maybe then should be considered, because the pay has already been approved. So they're getting the pay. Changing them to full-time, and then how they use their time in that capacity. Then are you saying it comes back to counties to set more rules for them? Because if you make them full-time, but there aren't any outlined requirements, I'm just full-time. I can still make it or not make it. So changing the classification, the county on the Clark side, I think we have ample resources for our commissioners to be successful in that capacity because we have support staff. Not saying the Washoe has that, and maybe this will help Washoe. But we've already approved the pay. So are we just taking them full-time and then approving more incremental pay? But because we approved the pay in SB 116. So now you want to make them full-time. It's still at their discretion what they do in that full-time capacity, unless we're going to write some rules or have the county write some rules.
Skip Daly again for the record. I was not anticipating getting into county policy on attendance at meetings. That would be a county policy issue and discussion on what they wanted to do. If they had a person that was appointed and they split it up to 5 subcommittees or various things that they're supposed to attend and go, and they're full-time positions, so they don't have any other excuse for, work conflicts or various things, and they just weren't showing up, it would be up to the other county commissioners, and they would have ability to set rules. Am I thinking that I would have anything to say about what their rule might be? No, and I don't think the legislature should do that either. That would be up to the county commission and how they want to handle it. There's no requirement for them to set rules, but they certainly would be able to.
We do have a follow-up by Senator Neal, but before I go to her, members, do you have any additional questions from any other member before we give a second sweep here? Do we have anybody in Carson City wishing to join in the conversation? Members in Carson City. Seeing none, we'll come back to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. Senator Daly, is the issue that we're trying to get at is the minimum effort? And we're believing that if we pay more, then they will give more effort? Because a commissioner because in your bill, this also is like city council too. If somebody is giving minimum effort, that's a character flaw, right? Which should be dealt with in an election process called get out. And so if we have individuals who are failing to perform and do minimum effort of what we believe is required as a commissioner or a city council person, then to me, the remedy is not more pay, right? That's like saying, like, it's probably like the perpetual argument we've been having with the school district, right? Like, if we give you more money, you're actually going to educate kids, but it's actually not happening. So, because there are some things that are just inherent character flaws, right? It's a bad candidate. It is a bad elected official who is lazy, who is just like, I actually just want the title and I want to walk around like a little peacock and I don't want to do any work. So why would we pay that person more and then embolden the peacock? Because we know for a fact, Senator Daley, that we have people who just walk around with the title and they don't want to do any work. So that has been not just this generation's argument, but a 30-year ago argument around who is elected. So I'm just trying to figure out what it is that we're trying to cure, because if it's minimal effort, I'm not sure if this is the appropriate cure for the character flaw of the person who is elected.
Skip Daly again for the record. Thank you, Senator. So part of what you said is, and what we have talked about, yes, we have character flaws. We have candidates that are just being peacocks and not doing the job as well as we would like. They're doing it minimally. And yes, that's a character flaw. But they were elected. And if we want to have someone run against them, someone compete against them, some of them point out that they're only doing the minimal amount, and somebody that we want to have come in and say, hey, I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to go to these committees. I'm going to do this work. Yeah, except at $66,000, what it was in Washoe County, I can't make a living, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go through that effort. Where if we're saying, no, you're making a better livable, standard, and you're going to accept that job, and we expect you to do it. So I don't think you can have both. I don't think you can attract that candidate that's going to go on that. Maybe you can, and there are plenty, like I said, plenty of good people that have taken those positions, same as we have here in the legislature. People have taken the positions regardless of the other issues, but not all of them. And I'm just saying that I think we ought to balance that and look at it and say, if we're going to try to attract that person, we need to pay that person to get the peacock out of there, and we need to make it full-time so they know what's expected of them when they're coming in. And then the guy who just wants the job, who's just going to do the peacock and not really put the effort in because I'm really making my money or doing whatever on my other job, they're not going to have that other job, so they're not going to be able to run again, or they're not going to make the commitment to run again. And I hope that answers your question, because that's the facts that we're trying to get with, is we've got to change the paradigm and the sequence from what it is now, so we maybe can correct it. And I'm hoping, and I believe that it will move a long way to correct that situation.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Seeing that, I do believe we have some folk joining us from Washoe. Are they there with you, Senator Daly? If we could have both of them join us.
They are, yes, thank you.
And then afterwards, we'll move down to Clark. Good afternoon to both of you. Thank you for joining us. Whoever wishes to go first.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the committee. My name is Clara Andriola. I'm a commissioner, and I'm the current chair of Washoe County, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm certainly appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I really feel that I'm a resource at this point, and happy again to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, and I appreciate you being here. Do you have any position on any of the remarks that were made by any of our members or questions that were raised that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Well, first of all, I think that respectfully, whatever ends up coming out, we would, as a commission, look at that as a body and handle it appropriately. I do think there are a couple things that I would like to add, and I'll speak on behalf of myself only. Just to give you an idea what my day looks like, I get to work at 6:30 every morning, and sometimes based on events, I may not be coming home until 9 p.m. at night, and no break in between. I take the job extremely seriously, even though we in Washoe County, as the second largest county in Nevada, we represent about 511,000 residents versus 2.4 million, and that's certainly understandable, but the budget for Washoe County is 1.17 versus approximately a $12 billion budget. And each commissioner, as an example, is allocated $100,000 in funds at Washoe County to use to help support their district needs and help the community that they serve. So I just thought I'd throw that out. I also would just add that for the history, I don't know how long, but probably from the beginning of the state, Washoe County always has had the North has always had a higher cost of living in terms of just the basic, whether it's housing and other commodities that all residents are having to endure. So it is pretty common that when you come to the North, wages actually are higher. We as a county have prided ourselves on looking at doing as much as we can with as little as we have. We do not have the full-time staff, but our budget doesn't allow for that in the way that the capacity of Clark County also enjoys. But we have a small but mighty staff. But we as commissioners are responsible for doing a lot of the hard work that's expected by the constituents that we serve in our community.
And thank you. Members, any questions? We'll start off with Assemblymember Nguyen, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize, I'm a little late to this discussion. But I think I'm wondering, and thank you, Madam Chair, for being here, in terms of looking at your colleagues across the country. And I know sometimes we look at, Clark versus Washoe, we have that continuous conversation about, Clark versus everybody, right? But in terms of looking at across the country, when you talk to your colleagues, in other states who have similar budgets as you have, do you find any anecdotal things that they're doing that maybe we should be doing here?
I would be really impressed with myself if I can answer that question. I do not have a good feel for comparable counties and what that looks like. I'm not really sure. Through the chair to you, sir, I'm not exactly sure if you're asking me, is it pay or you're talking about responsibility? I'm not exactly clear on that question.
Thank you. And yes, I wanted to go in the directions of asking if you are familiar with perhaps your counterparts, folks in your same position across the country, who are in the same budget constraints. What are things that they are doing that may be more helpful if we go towards that direction, outside of the salary conversation, maybe part of the salary conversations, just so we know that we benchmark a lot of things here in our state with one county versus the other. But in terms of your experience, right, because you've been in the position for a minute, when you go across your, whether you're a county gathering of other commissioners or supervisor equivalent across the country, do you hear of or know of things that it's been done that we're not doing here, that perhaps we can highlight those? Because we feel like we look, inwardly within our state, but how about awesome things that people do in other parts of our country in similar position as yours?
Mr. Chair, through you to, what is it? Assemblymember Nguyen. Sorry, I apologize. I think that one of the benefits of having NACO is to be able to provide that information. And we have a representative here with NACO who may be better suited to actually answer that question. I really don't have any specific examples that I could give you, but I certainly would appreciate the opportunity to follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if we're gonna summon NACO up.
Well, I don't know if we have somebody. Do we have somebody? There we go.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. For the record, my name is Vincent Guthrie. I serve as the Executive Director of the Nevada Association of Counties, or NACO. So the Nevada Association of Counties, along with all of our counties here in Nevada, are members of the National Association. And I share Chair Andriola's benefits of belonging to the National Association. We have 3,069 counties, parishes, and boroughs across the country, and we can garner that information offline. I think I'd like to narrow down what it is that you're looking for, as far as whether it is compensation, how they fund, if there are counties of similar size, budget, and sort of government structure. But definitely, Assemblymember, I'd be happy to follow up with you. That information, I'm sure, is readily available from our national counterparts. So I would be happy to follow up with you. But I don't have the information with me today.
Mr. Guthrie, I just want to make sure that I also ask you in terms of when you're going to give me that data, and of course the rest of the committee that data. We're looking at, because we're talking about parity here, right? I think that's the conversation has been going on since the start of this meeting in terms of parity. Outside of the salary conversation, I just also want to know if you've seen or heard any other conversations around this particular topic of just, I think we're looking at just status in terms of part-time, full-time, salary versus, stipends. And I'd be curious to know the kind of the hot topics around this issues, because it feels like it's an age-old question when it comes to public office and the compensation, because we can go all day long here about what is worthing, what it's not, and what is comparable, what's not. But looking at just the trend nationwide in terms of the elected office, what else do you see outside of the salary conversation?
Sure, happy to answer all of those questions. If we have that data, I'm happy to give it to you. I think for most counties across the country, they have fiscal home rule. They can raise those salaries. They have different laws, rules, regulations that garner that. Nevada's in a unique spot where the legislature sets those salaries, which we did last session, or this body did last session. But I'll look to our National Association to provide that information from our counterparts across the country. I do not have that information readily available to me, nor do we track it at our state association, but I will look to our national partners to provide that information. Again, Vincent Guthrie for the record.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Do we have anybody from our Carson City folk? Do you have any questions? If you could just unmute yourself, please.
Not at this time, Chair, thanks.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if we were hoping to get any additional remarks on the record from from Washoe before we come down to Carson City. Good afternoon, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Cadence Matijevich, CADENCEMATIJEVICH. I have the privilege of serving as Government Affairs Liaison for Washoe County. I do not have any additional comments to make, but I too was here as a resource for you today and remain available as a resource as this conversation continues. If there is specific information that you might need about our structure in Washoe County, how the office of the county manager or other county offices are staffed, how we, through the direction of our Board of County Commissioners and our county manager, structure those offices and staff them, I'm happy to provide that information.
and thank you for joining us. I'm sure the conversations will continue, so thank you. With that, we'll go ahead and move down to Carson City, Clark County. They both start with a C, my apologies. Ms. Jacobs, if you could please join us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the the Interim Government Affairs Committee. Joanna Jacob, JACOB, on behalf of Clark County. And unfortunately, our chair was not able to attend the meeting today. And I wanted to put on the record, Chair Flores, and I'll echo the comments from both the Washoe County Chair, Andriola, and Ms. Matievich, that we're here as a resource to you. Obviously, I did want to put on the record, Clark County did not take a position on the pay bill last year. And so we have implemented it. I listened to the conversation very carefully today. I did meet with a lot of my commissioners, Senator Daley, and spoke to Senator Daley in advance of this meeting today. And so he put on the record that there were varying opinions on this topic, and I think that's correct. As to my board, I can put on the record too that Clark County, we had a former commissioner here, and I can't do any better than former Commissioner June Giuliani could do, but this is a issue. I've been at the county for 6 years. The current commissioners work diligently in their work. Each commissioner represents over 300,000 residents, and the smallest district is 321,000 residents, the largest 376,000. That's quite a lot of residents, 2.4 million as was referenced earlier. And they all have different opinions and different views on public service. So we're here as a resource. I can say from our chair's perspective, what's currently on our mind right now, we are heading into our preliminary interim budget. We will be doing that later this month. So look forward to talking to you about these issues, but that is really of the top of mind at the County Commission today. And we'll be having if anybody's interested, that preliminary budget hearing is later this month on March 17th. So happy to hear any questions or anything that you would like for me to bring back to this committee as we continue the conversation.
And thank you for joining us. We do have a question for you, Senator Neal. Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was kind of more of a question to Washoe. I was just, because the previous statement was that they didn't have any full-time staff, and I know on the county side, they have the community liaisons and what have you. So I'm assuming that that's what she was talking about. There's also the benefit of actual employees across the department. Perhaps Ms. Jacobs could just talk about the overall structure in counties for staff support so we can get some understanding of how this might factor in. Thanks, Joanna.
Sure, Joanna Jacob for the record, JACOB. I'll do my best, Assembly Member Flanagan, and I know that you started your career at Clark County on that side, so you'll correct me if I misspeak in any way. 7 county commissioners, each has an executive assistant who manages their calendar and appointments and does a lot of different duties as assigned. I think each commission office has several liaisons that will help them with constituent issues. So then that was discussed earlier today. And then in some of the commission offices that have rural parts of their districts, they have a separate rural liaison that will serve really, and that's really the commission districts that have very large distances to cover. I will tell you, the liaisons also do a ton of work with our town boards and are responsible for our town board process, which is different from our cities. That is a substantial amount of time. Clark County does our zoning meetings in a separate meeting on Wednesdays, and that is the last step. Some we really do a substantial amount of work with our town boards. Those are evening hours, and the liaisons will staff and work on those applications that with the constituents and trying to address constituent concerns. I will also tell you that as I am staff for the county manager, that we sit on the same floor with the county commissioners. So the county commission, we have 38 departments with department directors and deputy directors and staff, along with a dedicated management county manager and four, I think, deputy county managers that oversee those departments, a chief strategy officer, a CFO, and then a whole host of civil district attorneys that serve as our county counsel and staff to the departments. I'm hoping I didn't leave anybody out. I'd be happy to kind of maybe come back to the committee with the formal structure. We have structures that we could report and make sure that you have it in front of you as you continue the conversation.
Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So I guess I have two questions. I'll start off with the first one, which is, what kind of conflicts would be solved if Clark County commissioners were treated as full-time employees? What would be mitigated?
Chair Neal, Joanna Jacob for the record. I'm struggling to figure out how to answer that question because most of the commissioners that are currently on our board are there on full-time hours. Some of them do have other employment that is disclosed, but I can tell you they all manage their schedules and they are able to manage their schedules. The conflicts, I think that I would actually, from my perspective, I think there are some of the commissioners, when I talked to them, felt like if it was a full-time job that they wouldn't have to do the outside, there's no outside employment. Some of the current commissioners have left their outside employment and treat the Clark County Commission as a full-time job. So I can't really speak to currently that I see any. I don't think I can answer that question to say and point you to a specific conflict. I would say that I think that is in conversations with Senator Daley, what he is trying to address, but he can correct me if I misstate his intent. And I don't know if that, I mean, I think that's my attempt to try to answer your question, Senator Neal.
It answers it, and I'm sure Senator Daley will correct you if he feels you said something different. So my second question is, when I think about Washoe put on the record how much, I guess, each commissioner has in discretionary money to do and activities within their district, what does Clark County get per commissioner?
Chair Neal, Joanna Jacob for the record, JCOB. I don't have that information with me today. I can absolutely pull that when I get back to the county and send it to you and to the rest of the committee. You are correct when you talked about Clark County that there are specific funds that each commissioner does get to invest in activities in their district. So I can confirm that. I don't have the dollar amounts with me, and I'm happy to report that to you, Senator Neal.
Can you just, for the purposes of this hearing, guess what you think it is or what it was? You've been there for 6 years. So let's say when you started 6 years ago.
Yeah.
What was it?
Senator Neal, I'm not sure that dollar amount has changed. I don't want to.
You don't want to be wrong, or you
I don't want to be wrong. Yeah,
Senator Neal, have pause.
Senator Neal, I don't want to be wrong, especially give you the wrong answer to any one of your questions. I would prefer to give you an accurate answer. And yes, it's true. I said I've been there for 6 years, and I try to know everything that's going on in the county, and I don't, unfortunately. I don't want to misspeak. If you want me to go back in the last 6 years and tell you what it was over each year, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I only want to know if it changed, but I know what maybe Assemblymember Flanagan can tell me what she believed it was at one point in time, and then you can tell me if it's different now in 26.
Assemblymember, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To my colleague, Senator Neal, I recall, and I won't put this in as like a solid number, I remember a discussion that went before the Board of County Commissioners, and I want to say the figure was somewhere around, it was either $125,000 for each district to support outreach and events. I don't see why we would do $125,000 across 7. So because it's just no money for them. So I think it was something like $125,000. It was some time ago. I don't know if the number is the same, if the number has increased. And I am not offering it as an exact number. It is a memory from a BCC meeting, and I believe there was a discussion to establish those funds.
So maybe we can work from that number and see, is it that number or is it a higher number? And then you can tell us. Just because, I mean, I just stick by the question, right? If it's a character issue, it's not going to be solved if you pay them more, right? Because if you're never going to do the work and you never wanted to do the work and you just want to walk around and say that you are X, that is who you're going to be, period. And that's a fact. That would go for any of us. If somebody says they're Senator X and all they want to be is Senator X and they never do a single thing for their constituents, that is a character flaw that is not fixed, even if we change the dynamic of the money. It just allows that person to get paid and still be a person who doesn't want to serve his own district or her own district. That's a reality, right? And so I'm sticking to that money doesn't fix a character flaw. So, but thanks for your information on the money.
Members, any additional questions? Carson City or Las Vegas?
Nope.
Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Jacob. With that, we'll go ahead and close out the presentation. We'll continue with the agenda item. Next, we'll be moving on to agenda item number 3, which is the presentation on agenda item number 4, which is the presentation on the gun violence in Nevada. Just for clarity, we're going to be having different folk come in and discussing it through their own respective lens of expertise. As a way of introduction, as you all know, Senate Bill 156 went through this committee last session. It did have bipartisan support, and it is a bill that was brought forth to this committee by both young Republicans and young Democrats at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, after the tragic incident that led to the heinous murder of our colleagues, professors there at UNLV. Unfortunately, because of when it had occurred post the 2023 legislative session, and unfortunately the students were then forced to bring this conversation all the way up until 2025. In the interest of trying to help the students and find middle ground in the conversation, our staff was very diligent in trying to invite as many individuals to the table as possible. Notably, unfortunately, the Washoe County School District was unfortunately unable to join us. We also invited the NRA, and unfortunately, they were also unable to join us. We do have other folk who hopefully will be helpful in engaging in this conversation. But I did want the record to be abundantly clear that amongst those invited were them, and that was in an effort to have a holistic conversation so that we have as many different angles of this conversation present in order to move the conversation, hopefully in some type of amicable way where all of us are working together, where I think collectively everybody agrees that we need to address gun violence in this state and country. So with that, we'd like to first invite representatives of Metro and the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for being here and thank you for your work. Do either one of you have a preference if we start in Northern Nevada or Southern Nevada?
Chair,
Joseph
Josh
Cole.
Martinez, for the record, I don't have any preference.
Joseph Colacursio for the record, and Mr. Martinez, feel free to go ahead.
All right, I'll go. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the Government Affairs Interim Committee. My name is Joshua Martinez. I'm a captain with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. We're here to provide an overview of firearms and gun violence, as we would refer to it as, and I'll just provide a brief overview of some statistics and data to be able to address maybe some of your questions that you may have reference this topic. So the sheriff just recently gave his State of the Department overview of 2025 crime numbers. Violent crime in 2025 decreased by 4.3%. Property crimes decreased by 9.4%. And then our officer-involved shootings reduced from 17 to 7 in 2025, which was a 58.82% decrease. Our homicides, we were under 100 homicides for 2025. We had 90 homicides, and when the sheriff took office in 2021, we had 158 homicides. So that was a 21.7% decrease from 2021 to 2025. And it's the first time in a decade or more that homicides have been under 100. In 2025, we had 5 homicides that were committed by juveniles, which was a decrease compared to 18 homicides committed by juveniles in 2024. So we have various sections that handle gun crime investigations and assist with the overall investigative component. One of those is going to be our Crime Gun Intelligence Center, which we refer to as CGIG. That's a task force that's made up of alcohol, tobacco, and firearms detectives, as well as which is known as the ATF. So they respond to individuals that are in possession of firearms. They help track the sales and purchase of those firearms. So they're able to show the history of that gun that has been used and that gun that has been impounded, as well as they assist with NIBIN investigations. NIBIN is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. And that CGIG task force also assists school police when they have individuals that bring firearms onto school campuses. So they'll be able to take over those investigations and assist school police as well. We have the forensic laboratory. They're the ones that will examine the firearms. They will test fire the firearm, and they will enter that information into the NIBIN system. We also have the Violent Gun Crime Unit. This is a new unit that was created in 2024 at the direction of the sheriff. We had homicides with a solve rate of over 90%. With the gun crimes that we were seeing when somebody was shot at or somebody was shot and they were hit, but they did not pass away, we saw a 30% solve rate, which was significantly lower than the homicide solve rate of the 90 percentile. So he created a team of detectives that was led by and currently led by 1 lieutenant, 4 sergeants, 4 teams of 8 detectives. As I said, that was established in 2024. We saw the success of centralized investigations with homicide. So we centralized the investigations with firearm related crimes. October 29, 2024 is the birth date of that investigative unit. They had 43 cases, which was 100% solve rate. In 2025, that section handled 249 cases with a 98% solve rate. Gang investigations is a important part of the gun crime investigations that we do. And as I said earlier, we saw an uptick in juvenile violence involving firearms. So a juvenile task force in the gang section was created. And we saw a reduction, as I said, with juvenile homicides. So the proof of concept is there with the targeted approach that we have taken as an agency in regard to gun violence. And I'll go into some of the numbers that we have and some of the crime categories that we have. So one of the crime categories that we talk about is the prohibited person. That's somebody that is prohibited from owning a firearm. It could be related to being a convicted felon, a habitual user of drugs, or domestic violence related convictions. In 2023, we had 1,828 arrests for that. In 2024, we had 1,505. And in 2025, we had 801 arrests. So as you could see, from 2023 on, we have seen a decrease, and that goes to the targeted approach, the overall whole agency approach to gun investigations, and then homicides committed with the use of a firearm. In 2023, it was 89, 2024 was 73, and 2025 was 55. There was a 25% decrease in firearm-related murders from 2024 to 2025. There's a steady decline in juvenile murder suspects from 26 in 2023, 18 in 2024, and 5 in 2025. Domestic violence has been the leading causative factor of firearm murders, with 18 in 2023, 14 in 2024, and 15 in 2025. Domestic violence accounted for 27% of the firearm murders in 2025. And then we have the other crime categories with assault with a deadly weapon with a firearm. And we've seen in 2023, 793 there, 2024, 806, and 2025, 777. Moving forward, just to talk about the juvenile gun violence that we've seen, one of the areas that we would like to focus on is when a juvenile is in possession of a firearm, it's a misdemeanor crime. We took an approach during the last legislative session to try to make that a gross misdemeanor. Because what we have seen with investigations, and we have seen this firsthand, where we had detectives that were shot at, the individuals were adults that helped lead and commit the crime. But when we were able to take the individuals into custody as they were exiting a vehicle, the guns were in the possession of a juvenile, because the adults do know that it's a misdemeanor possession for juveniles when they're in possession of that gun. And that is something that we would like to explore again in the upcoming legislative session. So with the time permitting, I'll go ahead and conclude there. I would just like to say that Metro has taken a whole agency approach by creating task force, centralizing our gun investigations, and being strategic in the investigations that we do. And when we do have these shooting cases, these homicide cases, or we have the technology cases that we follow up on, is the shot spotter technology that you may have heard about. We relentlessly pursue those investigations, either through the detectives and the bureaus that are already assembled, or we'll have a major case protocol where we bring in the whole agency approach and we run a 24-hour operation. Thank you, Chair, for your time, and committee members.
And thank you, Captain Martinez, for sharing that data with us. We will now open it up for questions. Members, any questions? Senator Neal, please.
Can we get a hard copy of your presentation?
Yeah, I'll be able to put that together and send it over to LCB.
Okay.
Thank you. Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that presentation. Just one of the last things that you said, I just wanted to be clear. You were talking about when an adult uses a gun in a crime, but they're handing it to a younger person because that is a less of a penalty for that person, and that's something you wanted to work on. Can you just elaborate a little bit on that?
Chair, through you to Assembly Member Constantine.
And please do go direct.
Okay, I'll go direct. So in the 2025 legislative session, we had AB 199. And what I'm talking about is possession of a firearm. So when a juvenile is in possession of a firearm, and we'll say for discussion purposes, a concealed weapon, and it happens, and it is a firearm, it's a misdemeanor crime for that juvenile. If I'm in possession of that CCW as an adult, it's a gross misdemeanor first offense. And then there's a secondary offense if you're caught a second time with a firearm concealed without a permit. So what we would like to do is we would like to strengthen that to make it a gross misdemeanor for juvenile, similar, so that it would be the same category of crime as an adult possessing the firearm. And then we would also, in the bill, we had counseling wraparound services that we could provide, to the juvenile to help them not further offend and be intrigued to participate in this gun violence.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Neal, please.
Thank you. I guess do you have or can you provide the research that will show that increasing that to a gross misdemeanor is actually going to be a deterrent? Like, do you have research that will show that increasing the penalty will actually create a deterrent? And I guess, like, immediately what ran through my mind, right, was there's a lot of research since the 90s around overcriminalization and how we have responded to youth in different segments of like a 30-year journey, right? When we were, criminalizing kids, giving them life sentences and doing different things. Like, there has been a vast amount of research that I guess where people have learned the nuance of the policy to determine whether or not this is an appropriate deterrent and what is not an appropriate deterrent, because there was a period of time where we were heavily incarcerating juveniles in the 90s. A lot, right? And so there's documentaries, there's research, there's police research. So I'm just very interested in seeing the research that would say, yeah, you're going to be deterred from carrying a weapon as a child.
Again, Josh Martinez, for the record, I'll go directly to Senator Neal. We could put together research. We do know that we have encountered individuals that have been caught with a firearm that are juveniles, and then we subsequently rearrest them again for possessing a firearm. And we do have the anecdotal evidence from our interviews that they understand that the law is just a misdemeanor, and they know that it's going to be a slap on the wrist, as we would say. So we believe that harsher penalties would deter them from possessing it, and it would also deter adults from recruiting these individuals, juveniles, to possess the guns, because the adults also know that it's a lesser crime for the juvenile to possess it than for them to possess it. There is a book out there called Bleeding Out. It is an academic book. It was written by author Abbott. It is a book that we have read in the policing world, and it talks about gun violence, and it talks about individuals that are possessing guns, and it outlines the difference between a person that possesses guns and then them being future shooters. And so we know that individuals that possess guns at a young age will be either eventually targeted and hit and become a victim of gun violence, or they will become a shooter themselves.
Thank you for that. And so just to thank you for that information. So in Bleeding Out, when you mentioned this book, do you also cross-reference the one book with another book in order to have maybe diverse opinions and then come to a conclusion? Or do we focus on the one book and then use that as a guiding principle?
No, Metro is a learning organization, and part of that being the learning organization is we look at the academic studies that are out there. But as the 7th largest police department in the United States, we also participate in International Association of Chiefs of Police, Major City Sheriffs Association, and the sheriff is part of all of those groups and the other major groups that are out there. And we also have had other academic books, one being Ghetto Side, that was written by a detective, if I remember correctly, out of LA, that does talk about street violence as well and things that contribute. But also there's various other articles that we read from the professional organization on a regular basis.
Well, I appreciate that, because as I guess the chair is entering into this phase and this journey, knowing at least the context of the books that you read and knowing what they are. So, we would be better educated, or I would be better educated on like the context and the text in which these discussions are happening. It's always good for me, because then I can see things through the lens in which you're seeing it, because I'm reading, although on an intellectual and academic purpose, I am at least reading and can like go through those texts and then have a better visualization. And so that's why I wanted to know, because that's helpful for me.
if I may, Chair, I just got one other comment would be domestic violence. When we know that there's firearms that are present and a domestic violence situation is going on, we know that that firearm has a high possibility of being used in that domestic violence. Study shows that. Our leading causal factor of our homicides within the Metro's jurisdiction, as I just said, is domestic violence related homicides. And every day we're trying to do things to lower those numbers. So when the firearm is present, whether it be a juvenile, whether it be a domestic violence partnership or somebody that is in a mental crisis, we know the possibility significantly increases in the percentage of that firearm being used.
Thank you for that. I know a little bit about that because my daughter worked with the domestic violence groups as a volunteer and was trained and would work with the police and, you know, go on scene for different incidences and then be kept until the area was secure, where she can then go in and talk to victims, right? She did that for at least 2 years. So I'm familiar. But just one final question, Chair. How would you guys, because you mentioned in part of the presentation around the wraparound services, how would you provide the wraparound services when mostly you guys have said like you're overburdened in certain circumstances? So how, just like illustratively, how would you be able to perform the wraparound services with the juveniles who you're attempting to, you know, mitigate their gun usage? Like, what is this strategy? How will you create, I guess, the environmental ecosystem with the officers or others, right? Who's available to create that wraparound service that will then reduce those occurrences?
Josh Martinez again for the record, Senator Neal. We have our Office of Community Engagement. It's an office that has doubled in size, as well as our community-oriented policing teams. We have a list, a large list of wraparound services, NGOs that we work with to provide that. We have our DREAM program, that is a project that has grown to work with youth on a daily basis. They have a big van where they'll go out into the communities and pick these juveniles up. I have my partner, Officer Hunt. He's part of the DREAM program. He still helps mentor kids on a regular basis, as well as we work with the pastors. So when we have a response, when we have, whether it be juvenile violence or adult violence, our pastors will go out into the communities and they'll start to deal and work with those families to provide them the resources that they need and work with that juvenile or that family that's been a victim of violent crime. And if it's a juvenile in particular, they will have people that have been incarcerated to work with those juveniles to talk about the downfall of crime and how that's not a path forward, and it leads to incarceration, it leads to a person not being successful. So we have the Office of Community Engagement, as I've said at other hearings I've been at. I welcome you, and we could get you scheduled to come out and work with our director of that section, see what the DREAM program does, meet with the pastors. We have the Multicultural Advisory Committee that the sheriff has that advises him on a regular basis. But we do have access to a lot of services. Back 24 and a half years ago when I started policing, we didn't have this type of outreach. We didn't have these types of wraparound services. And as I said, you could see the juvenile numbers going down. The proof's in the pudding when you have 5 juvenile-related homicides, which was a decrease compared to 2024 when we had 18 of those. And then we established not only the violent gun crime section, but we had a lieutenant that took it upon herself in the gang investigations to create a juvenile task force that helped lead that decline in that juvenile violence, because we do have those books that have taught us the right way to do things.
So, and I thank you for that information. And I guess, you know, like when you put those numbers saying that everything has gone down, that means the strategies are working. That doesn't mean that, well, one could say that there isn't a need to do an increased penalty if the strategy that you're currently doing is working and reducing the numbers, right? Those are, I mean, some could say it's semantics, but if proof is in the pudding that other strategies and other wraparound are working, then why pursue increased penalties when the different strategy is actually changing the outcome? And I will take you up on the offer. We could plan in April. I'd like to go on a pastor call. I don't want to sit in anybody's office, listen to somebody talk to me and tell me about a PowerPoint. Like, that's not what I'm interested in. But if there's like someone going on a call and a pastor's going out to deal with a family, and that is of interest to me to hear and to listen, not to sit in an office and someone tell me what they do, but to see what they do and be a part of that. That's different than a ride along because it's a real thing. And ideally, you know, in my district.
Josh Martinez again, Senator Neal. Yeah, and I will take you up on that, and we'll make sure that that gets done. I'll work with our folks, and we'll be in contact. And the importance of increasing is because you need to standardize things. And in that book, Bleeding Out, it talks about there still has to be punishments. There still has to be some type of punishment because sometimes not everybody's going to adhere to the wraparound services and the counseling and the mentorship and the other things that we want them to gravitate towards. Some folks just aren't going to, and there has to be that equal penalty. So you can't have crimes that are different for juveniles, that are different from adults when it comes to guns, because those folks understand that. And we understand that there needs to be the similarity. And that's why when we do things at the local level, since Metro Police is in the city of Las Vegas and Clark County, we make sure that the equal ordinances are passed, because if not, then we start to have a difference in policing methods, and we want to be consistent.
Members, any additional questions?
Mr. Chair, if I might.
Yes, please.
Mr. Martinez, could you restate your comment about in Bleeding Out about a youth having a gun becoming either a victim or a shooter later in life? Could you put that in some context for me?
Josh Martinez, Assemblyman Gurr, what I'm trying to convey, what the book had taught me is policing is when an individual is in possession of a gun, a juvenile or an adult, and they're involved in the violent world that we know exists out there, that they're either going to become a victim of a shooting or they're going to become a shooter themselves. So when I was out there to deploy my strategies with my area command as a captain or a manager as a lieutenant or a shift sergeant when I had a squad, is to be able to say, hey, when we come across individuals and we legally stop them and when they're CCW illegally, those are our future shooters because they're already dabbling with the gun. Just like when individuals will dabble with narcotics, eventually those people become full-blown users. The same people with that, you know, you could use the same concept as if they're possessing guns. I'm not saying like CCW where you go to a class. I'm talking about individuals involved in narcotics trafficking, gang-related criminal activity is what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the individual that legally has a CCW permit or they're law enforcement or some type of law enforcement and they're legally to possess that. So that hopefully clarifies it, but I'll try to do a little bit better if it doesn't.
Well, I appreciate that. It was just kind of a comment that could be taken a lot of different directions, but that clarified it for me. If the adult that gets picked up with a gun and an illegal activity right now, it's just a gross misdemeanor?
Sir, Josh Martinez again, Assemblymember Gurr. If they're CCW illegally, if they're illegally possessed a firearm and it's concealed, not discernible by the regular eye, then that would be a gross misdemeanor crime. If the gun is used in a shooting and they shoot at somebody, that's a felony, of course. So when I broke down the statistics, I talked about a prohibited person in possession of a firearm. And then I also talked about assault with a deadly weapon. Well, assault with a deadly weapon would be somebody shooting at another human being, not hitting them. That's a felony crime.
I appreciate that. So that's the reasoning behind having a juvenile with a concealed weapon in his possession going to gross misdemeanor instead of just misdemeanor. Is that correct?
Correct, sir, because it would make it consistent with the adult charge and not having a lesser charge for a juvenile.
And that may slow down the adult handing that kid that gun?
Sorry, Josh Martinez again for the record. In policing, we believe that would slow down the adults by giving the gun to the child. I mean, I've witnessed it firsthand watching the investigation that I mentioned as an example, where the individual, the juvenile, had the firearm and the firearm was provided by the adults. And so they know that child is only going to face the misdemeanor charge.
Thank you. I appreciate all the clarifications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair Flores. I appreciate that. Is it Detective Martinez? I don't want to get your title wrong. Is that correct?
I'm a captain, Senator.
I apologize, Captain Martinez. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. I just have a couple of questions. Okay, and I know it goes along with my other colleagues. So I'm a little bit concerned about increasing a penalty for juveniles. And then I'm not exactly sure what the crime is. Is it only during the commission of another crime or only during the commission of a bank robbery? Or is it a juvenile who has a firearm? Because, okay, let's say hypothetically, well, not hypothetically, my father taught me how to safely hold a gun and shoot it when I was 12 years old. So now would my dad have been guilty of a crime, and would I have been guilty of a crime? Is that what you're saying? Or is it only during the commission of a felony? Please, thank you.
Senator Josh Martinez, for the record, it would be if the juvenile, what you're describing is legal. You're talking about sports shooting, target shooting, teaching youth how to handle a gun. That's legal, what you're talking about. What I'm talking about is I'm out there on patrol and I stop an individual for probable cause and they're a juvenile and they throw a backpack on the ground and I retrieve the backpack, and during my search incident to arrest, I find a gun. That's CCW, which is illegal because they're carrying it concealed. I had reasons for the search and for the stop. That's a misdemeanor crime for the juvenile right now. If it was an adult, it would be a gross misdemeanor. So what we'd like to see from law enforcement is to make that a gross misdemeanor for that juvenile.
Okay, so only when it's a concealed weapon, is that correct?
Concealed or illegally possessing that firearm. But for topic of conversation here, to keep it simple, we'll talk about illegally concealing a firearm.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you, Captain Martinez, for joining us.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee.
And we'll go back up to Northern Nevada for our Sheriff's Office.
Good afternoon, everybody. Joseph Colacurcio for the record, JOSEPH-COLACURCIO, and I'm a captain with the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. And please, you could address me as Captain Cola or Cola. It's a lot easier for those. I have a presentation that I put together, and can you see it down there in Vegas?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So I'll run through the numbers. Numbers are very similar to Captain Martinez. Broke down the firearm-related cases by year from 23 to 2025, with some percentages of firearm-related cases involved in the violent crime. So moving along, if you have any questions or you need to stop me if I'm going too fast, please let me know. With this, we have firearm violence in Washoe County. This is the big overview picture. So from 2023 with 111, 2024 110, 2025 119 for over the years. So pretty flat over the years. The graph below shows a monthly breakdown for the yearly, but it shows over the years we have pretty much a consistent number in the north up here for Washoe County. Going over and breaking that down, so we look at firearm-related cases from 23 to 25, violent crime versus other crime. Violent crime is identified as aggravated assault, murder, and negligent manslaughter, rape, and robbery, all tied in where a firearm was used in the commission of that crime. So over that time in the big picture in the 3-year breakdown, we're looking at 208 were another crime, and that could have been discharge of a firearm, anything like that, that was not in a violent manner. But we had 132 for the violent crime during that time. And to break that down a little further, so in case I went too fast, looking at those types of firearm-related incidents, aggravated assault, domestic violence involving firearms, discharge of a firearm, homicide offenses, and robbery. Those are those big offenses that we just talked about in use in a violent or commission of a violent crime. Looking further and going down, we have the types of firearm-related incidents and what they are and what they're broken down to over the 3 years. So aggravated assault, domestic violence, discharge of a firearm, homicide offenses, and robbery, looking at all those for the years. And you can see it's pretty standard across the board with not much of a change, so not much of a huge percentage change, except for the discharge of a firearm, which could be, for the lack of better terms, what we would call discharge of a firearm from a moving vehicle into a residence, something along those lines that would qualify on that manner as a, per se, a drive-by. We also broke down up here were those crimes committed in a residence versus a public location. What time did that offense occur? Was it in an urban area or a rural area in Washoe County? And I have those numbers as well. So from 23, 24, and 25, what you see here and in the presentation I presented, the public locations, a little bit more open, 71, 66, and 88 over the time. And then those numbers in the residence areas, which could have been anything with domestic violence, shooting into a residence from a residence, or any of those matters, 40, 44, and 31 over the years. Next slide will bring up time of day. So it's split pretty evenly. The time of day is defined from 6 a.m. to just before 6 p.m. and nighttime is 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and it's based on that. So those numbers are pretty even for day and night and what those are. And then as we look further down, urban and rural. So the urban and rural reports are based on our geographically selected beats in Washoe County. So we have one major rural beat, which is everything pretty much north of the Pyramid Lake area, with a very low population in that area. And then our urban area is everything south of that within the county jurisdiction. So most of that occurs in the urban area, as you can see. We also broke down who is involved in a high-level overview, the age ranges of the victims, age ranges of the suspects, and arrestees. On the next slide, I will show or will represent the age of the victims in the firearms incidents from 23 to 25. And that's the number of victims and their age range. So if you look on the left-hand side of the slide in the black numbers, you'll see 0 to 9, 10 to 19. You can see how our victims are broken down in age going with that. And that goes down to, back to Captain Martinez as well, and explaining that younger age and younger population using firearms in violent related crimes as well. So the next slide will show you the suspects and the arrestees, and you can see 10 to 19, 30, but our biggest area for us is between 20 and 39, so that adult range for us. Going to the next slide. So lawful ownership versus criminal use. So firearms are covered that were stolen, and then firearms linked to a prohibited person. Those could be anyone convicted of, those are prohibited persons that are not allowed to own a firearm. and I have those numbers as well. I know that on here it's probably hard to see from a distance. I hope you were able to get a hard copy of this as well. But this shows the breakdown of the recovered firearms by month and year and over the time and what we've recovered for that lawful ownership and criminal use. So some of these numbers could include slightly downward over the years, but this could be individuals turning in firearms and also us securing firearms that have been used in a criminal manner. The lawful ownership versus criminal use, so possession of a firearm by a prohibited person, you can see it's trending down for us up here in the north from 23 to 24 and 25. So the numbers have gone down from 31 to 20 and progressively have gone down since then. What we talked about, and I'll cover real quick, is the Washoe County Sheriff's Office current prevention and enforcement efforts. So we do go actively after, or we actively investigate those individuals that are prohibited persons and look for them in enforcement matters. Obviously, domestic violence cases where firearms are involved or need to be relinquished based on court orders. The extreme risk protection orders that have recently been brought up, so the now commonly known as the red flag laws that we use. We're involved in a multi-agency task force here in the north with our partners, Reno Police Department and Sparks Police Department, working against gun crimes. We also have a mental health co-response and outreach, so it's our MOST unit that we use. It's the Mobile Outreach Safety Team. They are clinicians that are assigned and work each shift. They go out and they work side by side with a deputy. They are our co-response model up here in the north. And they do everything from mental health issues to getting those wraparound services to whoever needs them. So they are our liaison here for the Sheriff's Office that do that in a phenomenal way for us. Then we're out and we deal with the targeting the frequent shooting locations. Here in the north, we have a lot of rural areas that are very close to our urban areas. What we find with our enforcement is a lot of those individuals are lawful abiding citizens and they're out shooting. They just don't know the laws that are in those areas that you are not allowed to shoot. They're considered congested areas and they are educated and we have those continued issues. And then target repeat firearm offenders, so our repeat offender program, and we look at them and continuously go after those individuals. And that's, I believe, what Captain Martinez was alluding to, is that those younger individuals that are commonly involved in, I would say, the nefarious actions as a young individual that are tied in with firearms, they end up using firearms again, and it becomes almost they become comfortable with it. It would be probably the right term to use, so that they feel that they have the ability to do it. And with a lesser penalty, it is something that I think is less harsh on a younger individual, which then doesn't ring well for them as they get older. They don't realize that, and then they're willing to repeat offend on that side of it. Moving on down, we're looking at outcomes and impacts. So the arrests stemming from shootings and calls for service over the time. So shooting calls for service type is used for the analysis. We end up with that call for service. That call for service could be tied to just an outside shooting, could be tied to assault with a deadly weapon, could be tied to battery with a deadly weapon, so the actual contact. And you can see our numbers are pretty even across the board, and they're not huge, but they are about average across the board. Some of the things that we have for our targeted issues and operational challenges and limitation is obviously staffing constraints and resources for us. These become time-intensive investigations for us when we end up with a shooting, like Captain Martinez was also alluding to, is that something that we are having, any investigation involving a firearm becomes a very time-intensive investigation and requires multiple facets of our agency to be involved, from our crime lab to different detectives and everybody across the board. And it's usually an all-hands-on-deck thing for us that we deal with, because guns are dangerous, and that's what we deal with. Our data sharing limitations, that's just something that honestly we're working through in the north here, and hopefully in the near future we have a better system and program to share information regionally for all these things. And then our post-arrest system dependencies and where we look at those. So those are the things that affect all the outcomes after the end, and that alludes to the misdemeanor portion of a case or turning it into a gross misdemeanor or even felony level things. Those are all stuff that becomes, the post-process for us. The key takeaways out of this for us and what we're looking at, firearm violence is measurable and it's context specific for us. So it is something that we can track and we are able to track. We do enforce the existing laws actively and continue to enforce those. And then we try working not just effective prevention, is the multi-system coordination. And that goes the wraparound services, not only law enforcement, getting into the school district, working with them, dealing with those younger individuals that are tied into that nefarious activity, into gangs, things of that sort. So those are things that we try and work with our community partners, our non-government organizations out there, and all those different groups to work better to hopefully eliminate the issues that we have with gun violence. And that'll conclude my slideshow.
And thank you for the presentation. The data was very insightful, so thank you for putting that together for us. Members, we'll start off with questions, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. We'll start off with Assemblymember Nguyen, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Captain, for your very detailed presentation. I really like the graphics and the highlights. It really helped me as a visual learner to see all that thing in front of us. Just a quick question. One of your slides, you mentioned your prevention and enforcement efforts, and maybe you have went over this already, but maybe I didn't catch it. The multi-agency task forces, who are those agencies, and has the partnership been longstanding?
Captain Kohler for the record, or Cole Curcio, sorry. So we work with the Reno Police Department, Sparks Police Department, and then the three-letter agencies, anywhere from the ATF, FBI, and those. They have, some of those relationships have come and gone with the federal agencies. Our long-standing with our local agencies has been very good. So regional gang unit, the repeat offender unit, those different units that have, we work with up here in the north. And I believe you had a second portion to that, sir.
Thank you for that. Just want me to clarify. So just for my own education. So regardless of whether those alphabet agencies on the federal level is active in the partnership or not, your numbers is more dependent on the local law enforcement that you work with, just to help with the prevention efforts.
Yes, and so the numbers I presented are only for the Joe Colacurcio for the record. Those numbers I presented are only for the Washoe County Sheriff's Office. So the Reno Police Department and the Sparks Police Department, they would have their own numbers with their own data within that set. So that doesn't include, what I presented doesn't include the Reno Police Department and Sparks Police Department.
Yeah, Captain, I just want to understand in terms of the support that you get outside of the local agencies. So is it to my understanding with your answer that the multi-agency collaboration is mostly on the local side of the conversation and not necessarily on the federal side of the conversation in terms of reducing some of the statistics that you presented?
So HSI, FBI, all those ATF, they all are assist or partner agencies when we need their help. Honestly, it's a staffing thing depending on if they have the staffing and the ability up here to assist us, to be honest with you.
Got it. Thank you, Captain. Thank you, Chair.
Senator Neal.
So I just had a quick question, only because I learned this when I was up there. Sun City is in Washoe County, right? And these numbers would represent that area?
Oh, Sun Valley? Is that what you're?
Sun Valley, yeah, Sun Valley.
Joe Colacurcio for the record. Yes, so Sun Valley is in Beat 3 for Washoe County. It does cover, Washoe County Sheriff's Office does cover Sun Valley.
Okay. Thank you. Because I just wanted to ask, because that's one of the, when I was up there, it's one of the more impoverished areas, and I just wanted to know, like, I guess if it covered that area too. Thanks.
Members, any additional questions?
Yes, Chair, I've got
Las
one.
Vegas or Carson City?
Chair?
Assemblymember Kirk.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Captain Cola. And I apologize to Captain Martinez for not using his designation. Thank you both for the presentations. You mentioned the red flag laws. Is it used much in Washoe County?
Captain Cola Curcio for the record. So I believe, and don't have the numbers, but being as the patrol captain, I believe we've only used it 2 or 3 times in the past couple of years. It is very detailed. It takes a lot of information. It is very, very, in my opinion, it is very well written to the point where for those that, in order to remove that and get the red flag laws on, it is appropriate. So for those that need to have a firearm removed and really haven't committed a crime yet and are putting those at risk but are getting there, I think we've only had 3, sir.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well,
Senator Krasser, did we have anything from you?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And it's not so much a question for it to be addressed now, but I'm assuming, I think I know the answer to the question, but if I could have from both Las Vegas Metro and the Washoe Sheriff's Office, also just a breakdown of male to female. I understand that it will likely, the numbers will be heavily on the male side, but I just want to see that breakdown only to make the point that as we're having this conversation as a committee, that we understand that there is obviously a need for us to invest in the relationships, in the conversations, in the mentorship when it comes to younger men, and how we do that effectively. There appears to be a very clear indicator there that there is a gap or an absence of that. And so I'm hoping that some of that data could help point in that direction on just how we can do a better job. I know Mr. Hunt and myself and many other members of Metro, we've had an opportunity to go out there and do programs and mentorship programs and speak to students. So I know there's a lot of that happening that never gets documented. That's not put in no one's putting that visit in some document where we're getting a full breadth of how much of that is happening, because there is a lot of mentorship that happens in silos, last minute invites, and it just never gets documented. But I am hoping for us that as we continue with this conversation, that we talk about how that is serving a purpose, because I'm confident that when they see somebody like an Officer Hunt or Captain Martinez, et cetera, that those are meaningful impacts that are helping address some of the concerns that we're trying to do here. So that's just for moving forward, unless you do have that data and you wanted to put it on the record. But if you could break that down, I think that'd be very useful for us.
Captain Cole Curcio for the record. And my question to you, Senator Flores, would be, are you looking for just the offender, or are you looking more for the victim as well with that? And second to comment about that is the community-oriented policing there usually is no documentation for it, and all that hard work and good work from the law enforcement and the deputy and officer at the bottom level doing that work is rarely documented. But I think I will have to say the generational changes in the way we have become more studious and understanding in what we do, I think it is evident for the numbers and why we're lowering the crime numbers here.
Absolutely, and I suspected that that'd be the case, because I know even legislators, we do last minute invites. We're going to be at this school. Can you send somebody, right? And again, no one's documenting any of that, but I know it is impactful. So maybe that's something we can maybe track a little bit better, and that's for a conversation down the road. So thank you, and yes, please data on both sides of it, both the charged individual and then on the victim side. And so thank you. I want to just go slightly deviate, and again, thank you both for your presentation and your help today. I want to deviate slightly from the agenda I know Mr. Allister and Mr. Emer Cespedes needed to run. I had originally indicated to them that they would open the conversation because the bill originated through youth and the bill originated through them coming to me. And I just inadvertently went out of order with that commitment. So if I could have them come up, and the reason I wanted them to initiate the conversation was because, again, the bill started there, and I thought it would be good to have that overarching conversation, and then move into our kind of very dedicated arms that are in somehow helping shape this narrative in one direction or the other. And I see our amazing staff here just helping upload the presentation. So whenever you're ready, welcome. And thank you again, Captain, for joining us.
Thank you, Chair Flores and the rest. I appreciate your time and consideration. I want to introduce myself. My name is Alistair Dias. I am a UNLV graduate from May of 2025. I was here last year, not in this exact room, but more or less in the exact space, proposing the same policy, which is SB 156. Obviously, as previously stated, we did have bipartisan support on this aisle, but of course, it was vetoed by the governor. So we wanted to revisit and repropose it on the table to potentially have it through the next legislative session. But I'll turn it over to Emer to kind of open us up.
Good afternoon, chairs, chair and members of the committee. My name is Emer Cespedes Alvarado, with Youth Voice of Nevada and a UNLV student. First, I want to thank you for inviting students to be part of the lawmaking process and for giving us the opportunity to present once again on Senate Bill 156, introduced in the 2025 legislative session. It truly means a lot to students like myself that you are willing to listen to our voices and include us in conversations about public policy that affect our communities. SB 156 was originally developed as a bipartisan effort by UNLV students in response to the tragic mass shooting that occurred on our campus. We were present during the December 6th shooting, and like many students, that experience changed how we think about safety and responsibility in our state. Our goal with SB 156 is simple. We hope that the committee will consider sponsoring as a committee bill so we can continue moving this conversation forward in a constructive way. We also hope to keep the dialogue open between legislators, community leaders, and students from both sides of the aisle. We understand that legislation is a collective process, and we welcome the opportunity to work with everyone on potential amendments so that we can find common ground and develop common sense solutions to reduce and target gun violence in Nevada. Thank you again for your time and for allowing the students to be part of this important discussion. Now we'll pass it over to Alistair to explain about the policy.
Thank you, Emer. Kind of going into the policy itself, we first wanted to explain not only what the policy is, but the nuances behind it as well. As Emer mentioned, both of us are survivors of the December 6th shooting over at UNLV. And obviously, as we heard earlier in this session from the public comments, gun ownership is an incredibly decisive issue in this country and in this state as well. And I can kind of tell you that we both present different perspectives on that issue, being from opposite ends of the policy itself. I myself am a legal gun owner in the state of Nevada, and this is a policy that I wholeheartedly support, and I know that many other people who are gun owners like myself would support it as well. So we're going to open up by understanding what the policy is, and then we're happy to answer any questions the committee may have. So we have a presentation. So we just wanted to explain a little bit about how gun violence has rocked the Nevada community and how that exactly impacts us. So Nevada has worked to increase gun safety laws in recent years. We've seen this with increased background checks, the banning of the bump stock after the October 1st tragedy, ghost gun bans, and extreme risk protection orders. Specifically, as you'll see in the presentation itself, between 2014 and 2023, the rate of gun deaths increased by 24%. That's about 581 people in the state of Nevada who die from gun violence in the average year. What we start to see, however, is an interesting trend start to develop, which is 68% of gun deaths are ruled as suicides, and 29% of them are homicides. So there is a clear distinction between gun violence against other people, but also gun violence against against the self. So we wanted to make a clear distinction that there are suicides, there are homicides, and there are different types of gun violence that does exist in the state that needs to be addressed. The purpose of SB 156 is to create a special counsel for the prevention of gun violence within the Nevada Attorney General's office to coordinate the prevention strategies and research. As we mentioned earlier, gun violence is not an easy solution to solve. There are many different dimensions that must be considered that intersect with things such as housing policy, education, employment, mental health, and of course, healthcare challenges. There are states that currently have infrastructure in place through government agencies and public-private partnerships that have seen success in approaching these issues. And I think it's appropriate for Nevada to consider joining these states in at least addressing the issue to a degree. So as we go through the bill, sections 2 through 6 give us an idea of definitions. Section 2 establishes the definitions that are applicable throughout the bill itself. Of course, we have certain terms throughout the bill that I know that during the public comment session had raised some questions. For example, the use of the term special counsel. Again, the purpose of SB 156 is to create an advisory body. They're here to give advice and analyses of policy to provide to the Attorney General, not inherently to prosecute a particular individual. Section 7 basically outlines what the goal is. Again, as we stated before, it's to appoint a special counsel for the prevention of gun violence at the pleasure of the Attorney General. State agencies may cooperate with and assist the special counsel in carrying out the duties of the position. As we stated, this is an advisory position as a whole, so they're here to provide recommendations, data analysis, amongst other things that can help policymakers make informed decisions. Section 8 is more or less the meat and potatoes of the bill itself. You'll see that the special counsel's role is to advise the Attorney General on gun violence prevention issues, things that are exacerbating gun violence in the Nevada community, and different things that we can do to bring about prevention policy. We're also here to promote public awareness for mental health resources, gun laws, and safe ownership practices. I know this was mentioned earlier in a public comment when it came to addressing the mental health component of gun ownership and the line between Second Amendment infringement. Again, the policy that we're trying to propose here is saying that there are issues that are causing an exacerbation of gun violence, and maybe it's time for us to consider them. Support of gun violence prevention and research and program development, along with collaborations with professors and researchers. Again, this gets more into the advisory component of the bill, which is looking at the data, looking at analyses, understanding where the trends in gun violence is occurring, and also what and how can we do this to prevent it from going further. Section 9 gives us grant authority. It basically says that the special counsel may establish and administer a grant program with available funding to support gun violence prevention in Nevada. Again, we want to draw a clear distinction that this is not meant to substitute private instruction of firearm safety, but instead to act as a supplement. If there's a way for the council to help support or offer grants to local programs that do offer firearm safety and instruction, then I think that could be to the benefit of all Nevadans. The grant may fund community-based and culturally competent programs by focusing on interrupting cycles of gun violence, trauma, and retaliation. So think about it more or less as a supplement to what many private programs may or have already done. Eligible organizations must demonstrate the ability to conduct effective gun violence prevention initiatives in high-risk areas to make sure not only that programs that do offer help to people who may be new to guns or want to learn more about safety actually get the education that they need to make sure that they stay safe. And finally, funding initiatives must use evidence-informed strategies and include regular evaluations with community input. So the idea is to create a closed feedback loop where the government not only helps supplement to some degree gun violence prevention programs, but also receives continuous input to make better and more closer informed decisions. Section 11 allows a special counsel to actually apply for and receive gifts, grants, and contributions from donors. I know this was mentioned earlier in a public comment about the influence of various donors in that process. There could be more money from left-leaning organizations, more money from right-leaning organizations. But I think one thing that would be important for the committee to consider is actually including some level of oversight or restriction on the types of donations that can come in. For example, the percentage that each donor can contribute, or for that matter, even having a bipartisan oversight committee to understand where that money is coming from and ensuring that we keep things unbiased and we keep things favorable to both sides and understand both sides' opinions. Section 12 goes over the fact that the Attorney General must submit an evaluation to the legislature to understand not only the progress of the program, but where it can be improved, where we can make things more equal, where we can make things more unbiased and open to every voice in the conversation. On your screen, you'll see a map of various states that either have implemented gun violence prevention offices or are in the process of doing so. And you can start to see that throughout the country, a lot of these policies are becoming popular by elected choice, and you'll start to see this trend potentially spread throughout the country. Nevada is actually a very interesting place to have an office like this because we tend to be a swing state. So you have a good amount of people on the left, good amount of people on the right. This is a great opportunity to bring both sides to the table and have a decent conversation about where we can take these policies further. With that, we wanted to thank you again so much for your time, and we'll open up the floor to any questions and considerations that the committee may have.
And thank you again for the presentation. I know, members, much of that was a recap of what you saw during the regular session. But because there was concerns that were raised during the session and because of the governor's veto message, we did want to allow an opportunity for, at a minimum, to consider how this piece of legislation could be moved in a different direction while achieving the same objective, which is everybody wants less gun violence. So with that, members, any questions for the students that you may have?
I have a question, please, Chair.
Senator Krasner, please.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate that. And thank you for your presentation. Well, let's start out with this. Number one, I have received multiple emails from the people telling me they do not want this bill. Those same people told me they did not want it during the 2025 legislative session when it was brought forward. Also, Governor Lombardo vetoed this bill, SB 156, in the 2025 legislative session. And so I'm wondering what's different now that you're trying to, it seems like you're just trying to bring the same legislation again, which of course we all know that would take a 2/3 vote of all members of the legislature to override a governor's veto. So I'm just wondering, how is it different now that it seems like you're trying to bring the same bill again? Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. So I think to answer your question, I know a lot of the concerns that were likely in the emails that you've received have been revolving around unjust influence, potentially from donors who say, the office may be easily influenced or may be prone to political bias. The key difference that we want to make is actually changing the language of the bill to include clarifications for bipartisan oversight to ensure that there are equal voices on both sides. I think the core difference from the last time we brought this forward was that the bill itself lacked language that talked about bipartisan support. So one could argue that if you have the influence of large donors who are right-leaning or left-leaning, then the office would lean more towards that direction out of a commitment to their donors. However, the thing that we want to change this time around, however, is to make sure there is actual oversight that can be provided. Of course, the original bill didn't have that during the last session, so the thing we want to change during this session is making sure that there is an equitable transparency into who donates to the special counsel, if there are any donations, but at the same time understanding possible violation. So one of the common counter arguments that was brought up during the last legislative session, but also was brought up during today's public comment session, was the bill possibly becoming an infringement of the Second Amendment. However, the thing that we want to entrust, essentially the thing that we want to do different with this time around, is actually making clear what the duties of the council are. Somebody mentioned this earlier about the council having prosecutorial power against people who are gun owners. However, we wish to clarify or even adjust the language to clarify that the purpose of the council is purely advisory in nature, mainly just to give the Attorney General recommendations based on data, based on surveys, based on research, on education programs, but also what can we do collectively as a community to bring down gun violence. So the main thing is that we're taking a more education-based approach versus just saying, let's do XYZ legislation to restrict firearms, which is not inherently the point that we're trying to bring.
Chair, follow-up, please.
Yes, please, Senator.
Thank you, Chair Flores. And thank you for your response. I appreciate it. I think there are other concerns. You keep talking about creating a council, creating a special counsel, creating a council that will have prosecutorial duties. So you're creating a whole new position that will be privately funded within the Attorney General's office. I'm just wondering how many other positions like that do we have in government, in the Attorney General's office where they're privately funded by outside agencies. Do you know? Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for your question. To my knowledge, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I'm happy to look forward. I'm happy to look deeper into it and follow up with you or with the committee with my findings to ensure that your question is answered.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. However, I don't know that that will alleviate the concerns of some of the people who opposed this during the 2025 session and still oppose it. But I do thank you for your work on this. I know your intentions are good, so thank you.
Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you both for the presentation. And just as a point of clarification for members, I know not everybody had an opportunity to work with the working group on this particular bill. One of the reasons that they suggested allowing for private funding and or for partisan / agenda driven money to be able to come into the conversation was mostly because one of the initial concerns that was raised when we were talking about funding it as the state, there was pushback in saying, well, why are we utilizing state resources to create an advisory role or a committee that will be bringing information back? We don't want the state to be using its money for that. So as a compromise to that, then we said, fair enough, we can allow private money to come in. That way we're not wasting the state's money. And it could come in from either side of the conversation. And it will be transparent. Everybody knows who's bringing in, what amount of money is coming in. Everybody would be free to bring money into this conversation. And then in that way, we can save the state money. And that was the intent behind that. There was no kind of plan. That was just a compromise because folk did not want state money to be used in this way. In addition to that, the reason that they did not provide a prosecutorial kind of authority and moved more into an advisory role was specifically because they did not want this to be weaponized and to be created as an extension of something that this was not intended to be done. So the compromise there was allow this to be an advisory role, advisory committee that reports back to the state and gives a centralized form of information pertaining to gun violence to the state. And then with that information and with that data, the state can utilize it in whatever way it wishes to use it. Do nothing, use it to create a bill, and or use it to guide legislation as we're moving forward throughout the legislative cycle. So that's kind of where the bill ended, but just wanted to provide some context to folks. And the purpose of this now is for those of you who had concerns and did not have an opportunity to vet the legislation prior, is for us to do that and to have more of an active role in it. We would like and encourage everybody here to be a part of that. So that is the purpose and objective now. If you don't like something in the bill, but clearly we agree that we need to address gun violence, then this is the time and the venue for us to be able to do that, not necessarily today, but you utilizing the resources and the time of this committee for that. So with that, members, I do thank you for allowing the students to present. This is where the bill originated after the tragic incident of UNLV. So I want to thank you both and all the hundreds and hundreds of students that are behind you. I specifically asked that they not fill the room with students out of respect of this turning into what would appear a attempt to move away from the data-driven conversation that we're hoping to have. And so out of respect, I asked that we do it that way. Otherwise, this room would have been flooded with students, and we would have had hundreds and hundreds of students providing what they lived through in that very tragic incident that happened in UNLV. But today we wanted to be very data-driven. It's the reason why we asked for that, so that you all are aware. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, well, number one, right? It's awesome when students try to push public policy. It's a good move. But one thing you might want to consider, I don't think I was present, that it seems like some of the compromises that were given to you might be red herrings, right? Because it sounds like they pushed you into a compromise that they also hated, right? And so you might want to consider, because it's a strategy, right? It's a strategy to kill your bill, right? You accept a compromise, and then I hate the compromise. So I don't know how you plan on dealing with that, but that is one of the things that you may want to go back to, thinking about what your original public policy outcome was that you really wanted, and really rethink that compromise, only because it didn't help you win, right? And it's currently not helping you win within the public policy argument that is being stated in the public comments, right? So that means you accepted a compromise that ultimately killed your bill. So I want you to rethink those provisions and really think about them outside of the box, and not think about them, well, I don't want to get rid of this because we compromised on this and this got us the vote, because it actually didn't, right? So just a lesson. I mean, you're going to be a future legislator one day. I'm just saying, like, it's a good lesson, because they play that game all the time. And maybe go back to the student groups and really think about, all right, they're really playing us on both sides of the argument. So take that testimony that came from the Nevada Firearms Coalition PAC, right? Dig into it, meet with them, get them to pin them down, because they're saying, oh, well, there is legislation I supported. There are concepts that I support. Pin them to those concepts, and then build a dialogue around that. And if they start to shift from their own testimony, written testimony, then you know it's a game that's being played on you to ultimately bring back legislation in 27 that will die in the building, right? So that's just my 2 cents. It's not worth a nickel, but it's 2 cents to you. All right.
Senator Neal just put on her Professor Neal legislature hat on. And thank you again. Any closing remarks you may have?
I just wanted to thank everyone here for your time and consideration, and thank you, Senator Neal, for your advice. I really appreciate it. I took some great notes from your comments. But I also wanted to thank you guys for being considerate of us as students. I know that it's midterm season, so everyone's like really busy. But thank you again for your consideration. We'll take a lot of these notes back and really understand the nuances and make sure that we have something stronger to present for the next session.
Thank you so much for the feedback and for the time. It's an interesting experience, and we will work along the aisle to make sure we can provide a better version of the bill. And also I will stay a little longer. In that way, if any legislator has any question, I would be more than happy to see the possibility of hosting a roundtable with bipartisan students. In that way, we can navigate more throughout these conversations. Thank you.
And thank you both again. Change is difficult, but with investment in time and working together, we can get there. So with that, we will now invite to the presentation table Clark County School District, please. And it's Chief Black Eye, is that correct?
That's correct. Chair Flores, members of the committee, thank you.
Welcome.
Do I start?
Please do.
All right. Mike Black Eye, Chief of the Clark County School District Police Department. I believe you can see the presentation. It's gun violence and safety regarding the Clark County School District. I'll be covering firearms recovered this year, this school year, the 2025-2026 school year, and covering our prevention efforts regarding those firearms in schools. So as you can see from the chart, dating back to 2023-2024 school years, we recovered 27 firearms in our schools, and we count these firearms when they are on our campus, basically when they hit our property, the sidewalks, into the brick and mortar buildings. 27, 24, and as of February, when we took this, when we created this presentation, it was 15. Also, that was February 19th. Since that time, we have recovered 2 additional firearms in our schools to make that number 17. Also, juveniles firearms on property. Those are the numbers of juveniles that were in possession of those firearms that were recovered on our property. When we ask these students why they're bringing these guns to school, the most common answer is for protection. Protection from a group or a threat or something of the like. And that is the most common answer when asked. And also, for any questions after the presentation, I have Detective Christopher Knight, who has actually interviewed every single student that was in possession of a firearm, so that may help me with answering some of the questions. Also, gang nexus. So more than half of the firearms recovered from our juveniles had a tie to gang activity or a nexus to gang activity. Our prevention efforts, quite extensive. We do have the single point of entry, allows for students, staff, identification easier, accounting for visitors, helps with our weapons screening or our random weapons screening program. Incident response badges, those are alert badges. So every single staff member receives a badge and it has a button on it. So they push that button if they see something that needs administrative support or emergency response. Our dispatch center receives those alerts. So public safety is notified immediately. Also, in a particular school, they have staff assigned to actually receive those alerts inside the school. So they'll send staff to address those incidents as they occur. Standardized visitor management systems. We use 2 types of visitor management systems that identify visitors in our schools, helps vet them so they know who's in their school. Secondary student ID policy. So each and every student, middle school to high school, wears a lanyard or a badge of some sort to identify that they are a student. Weapon detection systems. very popular over the last 3 years. We updated our very old magnetometers, I guess you'd call them, at our sporting events. And those were replaced at each and every high school. So those have been used extensively through these sporting events for the last 2 years. We also conducted the random arrival weapons screening program. That started, I believe, about 5 years ago, where schools are identified in a random manner each week. The staff is notified prior to the search, and we assist them in conducting those searches. We provide them training, and we stand by if anything occurs. We utilize the upgraded weapon detection systems for those searches as well. Security cameras and motion detectors, that's what our schools are equipped with, so they also help us in identifying and responding to incidents that occurred in our schools. Specialized resources, we utilize our campus security monitors heavily to assist us, as well as our attendance officers who main responsibility is for truancy, to address truancy. And they'll go to the homes, they'll go into neighborhoods, and they'll bring kids back to school. Transportation investigators, they serve as the critical liaisons coordinating the transportation department, law enforcement, public agencies, things like that for bus incidents, all the incidents, and also bus accidents, things like that. Our campus security monitor training has definitely improved in the last 2 years. They provide similar training that law enforcement receives in de-escalation, active listening, preventing targeted violence, gang activities. We help them with that. Human trafficking and wraparound services. They receive training in that as well, and suicide awareness. Student resources, they have Safe Voice, and that is heavily used. Go Guardian and Beacon. So every device that a student has, Go Guardian and Beacon is on that device. So, and it's monitored 24 hours a day, and that's how we receive our reports of suicide ideations that happen throughout the day and at night and on weekends, and also other incidents that potentially could be occurring in our schools. We have a 24-hour police dispatch center, and they receive all these alerts. So it would be Safe Voice, our alert buttons, alerts, fire alarm, motion sensors, our cameras, you name it. Our 24-hour, 365-day police dispatch center receives all of those and starts the initial response. And mental health supports. So CCSD provides mental health supports for all students. Let's see, we have school police social workers as well. And all these services, individualized case management, student support groups, multidisciplinary leadership groups, and site-based and home therapy are help provided to address incidents or prevent them.
Thank you for the presentation, Chief. And I know we were kind of dialoguing amongst ourselves here. I think there's a couple of questions on just how the data can be dissected a little bit further by region, schools, but I'll let the members kind of go into that. And thank you again for putting this presentation together for us. We'll start off with Senator Neal. We'll start off with Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I do have a question. So there's like a lot of systems and products and detectors, and I just want to know, are all of these items purchased by CCSD, or how are they all funded?
I'm not quite. I think it's. I would be guessing, but I'm thinking through bond funds through the facility when they're built. The buildings do come with the camera systems, the motion sensors, the fire alarms, things like that. The things that the district purchased beyond that, I believe, are the alert buttons.
Okay, so when anything is replaced, what I just wanted to really know is all of this funded by taxpayers? Is any of this donated?
I don't believe any of it's donated.
Senator Neal.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on that. So, when you say cameras, I mean, not all schools have cameras and all schools can't afford cameras. So it'd be really nice to find out what is the source of funds that actually pays for cameras. Because if it is bond money, then schools shouldn't be saying that they don't have cameras, right? They should have been able to put forth some kind of request in order to get cameras at their school. Like, so I'll just put this out there for an example. So one of the incidents that happened at an elementary, which happened to be namesake elementary, Joe Neal Elementary, where there was a homeless person in the park, and they went into the bathroom and the guy had a weapon, and then he ended up, a regular neighbor came in and like blocked him to allow the mother and daughter, came from the principal, to allow the mother and daughter to get away while he basically got shot. But they don't have cameras on the back of their school to even visualize the park. And they've been asking for years and they don't have it. So what do we do in those circumstances? Does CCSD police patrol a little bit more in those areas? Because what they have said is that they relied on Metro, but they did not rely on CCSD police.
Just question, did the incident occur after school hours? The majority of our staff I staff the majority of the department, pretty much almost every officer, to work during school hours.
And I guess that's true, but I do see officers outside of school hours. And that's not always, and I'm not always seeing them outside of school hours because there was a football game. Like, I'm actually seeing them cruise areas, and I'm wondering if they're on the clock and it's past 5.
Okay. Are they in a police car, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, of course, I wouldn't notice them if they were like in an unmarked vehicle.
Yeah, they could be. We do have a limited amount of staff that work swing shift and graveyard, so they were responding to after-hour incidents. They're doing home calls. So if a student goes home and reports to their parents, "Hey, Johnny did this to me," or "this thing happened at school," and they believe it's criminally based, they'll call our dispatch center, and then we'll send an officer. So that could be a situation where you've seen a patrol officer in the neighborhood after school hours. Something like that.
Okay. And then in the newer schools, are you at all using any AI cameras?
I don't believe we are. No. The two AI products I think it was facial recognition. That was years ago. That I can remember. I don't believe we have any right now that utilize facial recognitions. What I think is AI technology, but I may be wrong. It is a large district, and we don't oversee the security systems, which are the camera systems in the schools.
Who oversees the security system?
It's the security system department. I believe it's under technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to just go back to when you were saying like most of the kids are bringing weapons to school for protection. So the data doesn't say anything about the demographics of who, by race, gender. So what are the common issues? I mean, I know you said gang related, but they all can't be gang related, right? So are there other incidents where they're saying I need protection because they are straight up being bullied and it has nothing to do with gang incidences? Or is some of the incidences related to, they know that there is a human trafficker? Because I've heard stories, I think it was one of the high schools, where there were other older students that might have been trafficking younger students, 9th graders, and that was internal. So can you elaborate?
I can. I wouldn't do it justice. I have Detective Christopher Knight here, who actually he spoke to every student that brought a firearm to school. And I think in the last 2 years, if it's okay for him to bring him up and have him elaborate on those specific instances where it doesn't have a gang nexus.
Good afternoon, welcome. Hi, thank you. Detective Knight, Clark County School District Police Department. I'm also a member of the Juvenile Gang Task Force embedded with Metro. Like Chief Black, I mentioned, a lot of the gun calls that we get out of our campus are responded by either myself or my partner, who's also embedded with Metro gangs. And a common theme when we are interviewing these juveniles is what is the reason that you're bringing a firearm on campus? Protection is the number one reason that typically pops up. And when they talk about protection, I would say close to half of them are going to have some type of gang nexus with them, either by previous encounters that we've had with that student or intel that we've gathered from some of our outside agency partners. Bullying is another one where they are just trying to protect themselves to and from school, especially if they may live in a rougher area or they're walking home at night after activities at school. And then some of them don't necessarily give us a reason. I would say the vast majority of them, like I said, was either halfway with gang violence and or bullying being the primary reasons.
Can I follow? Are any of the weapons that you are retrieving, because they have BB guns that look like actual, like a gun, right? And so how are any of them, non-bullet guns that they have on their possession and they're actually maybe a BB gun or something else, or because I've seen that, right? Because you can go to the store, right, and buy a BB gun and it looks like a handgun, right? And in their mind, that is a threatening image that although they don't feel it's going to kill someone, but they have it because they think that's how they'll be able to protect themselves. So have you ever gotten that off any students?
Yeah, that is a very real issue that we also run into. And I know our counterparts in some of the outside agencies also run into the same issues when they recover firearms off of juveniles. Pneumatic guns or guns that are meant to look like real firearms that are actually firing BBs that are behind air pressure, not classified as a firearm, we still recover off campuses regularly. I wouldn't say that myself and my partner go to those calls as frequently as the real firearms that are recovered. But a lot of the same conversations are happening around those pneumatic guns. These juveniles believe that by possessing that pneumatic gun, they can use it as a form of not necessarily intimidation, but by brandishing a firearm in a self-defense scenario, they could protect themselves without the understanding of if somebody is trying to do them harm. A pneumatic firearm or a toy firearm is not really going to do much in terms of protection in and of itself. I know our department does track pneumatic firearms and other types of weapons such as tasers, pepper spray, knives, brass knuckles and such that are confiscated off campus, not just firearms. And the pneumatic firearms would fall within that category of other weapons.
Do you have information on how many of the students happen to have been female who carried a weapon for protection?
Not off the top of my head in terms of females. Typically when we're recovering a gun off a juvenile, I believe the only ones that I've ever talked to have been male students. Typically, if we have females that are in possession of other types of weapons, normally those are going to be things like pepper spray, taser, things of that nature. And a lot of them are talking about having to ride the bus home, public transportation on the way home, and wanting to have that type of protection on them. Typically, those juveniles aren't dealt with at a law enforcement level. We let the school admin handle that because it's more of an understanding that they're not possessing this in terms of having an ill intent on campus. It's a reasonable concern with them walking to and from home, to and from school, riding the bus, and things of that nature.
Final comment? Final question?
Please.
So within the context of, because could be females and males that are being sex trafficked, are there any instances that you know where female students or male students who believe they're being sex trafficked, either at the middle school, high school, who have came up with some form of weapon or weaponry in order to deal with the person who may be trafficking them because they don't know how to get out of that situation and they know that talking isn't going to get them out of that situation. So have you ever encountered anything like that?
I can answer that one. No, but we can ask. We've had an officer embedded with Metro Vice for the past 2.5, 3 years, basically because of the threat that our students face regarding human trafficking. So I can pose that question and see if there's an incident or a number we can come up with for you.
Thank you for that. So while you're doing, because it'd be good to, because I know the AG has a human trafficking element, but to know how many incidences of human trafficking are actually going on in CCSD that is being reported or shared with the AG's office, which has a group that works on that specifically, I think it would be helpful. And then any demographics that are associated with it, because clearly, right, there's state money that's dedicated to dealing with human trafficking. And part of the role of that money is for it to target in the area or region in which you believe the highest occurrences are happening, right? There's broad education and then there's targeted education. And so if those dollars are not making it to those targeted schools or areas, then, you know, what's the point? Thank you, Chair.
Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's just looking at the report, and thank you for the report. The numbers are significant. Any numbers are high, but wondering, I see all of the resources. Is there additional engagement between officers and the juveniles, sort of not like a mentoring program, not so much like the PAL, but something where relationships are developed outside of just like the licensed professionals who might respond, where you sort of in a community policing vein, but for students to give them redirection where you build a relationship?
Right. Well, I guess the best way is our officers assigned on campus to develop those relationships, guide, mentor throughout their career in high school, and if we have a middle school officer in the middle school as well. Additionally, a lot of our officers, not a lot, I guess you'd say, a good number of them, coach. They're involved in other aspects of their school life. And then we have the targeted LEAD program, which is law enforcement against drugs and violence. That's taught to our middle schools. That's a 10-week program, 1 hour a week for 10 weeks. They'll go in there and they'll teach things like problem solving, social media, obviously the dangers of drugs, violence, things like that. We also have a program utilizing an animated dog called Rocket. It's called Rocket Rules, and that's for our kindergartens, first grade, second, third grade. They'll go in there and through Rocket, and an officer that's with Rocket talk to the students about danger signs, about crossing the street, about calling 911, things like that. So that's pretty much of our touch in relations to preventative and instructional type of guidance, and just to contact with an officer in our middle schools and elementary schools. We also have the K9 program. They do a lot of presentations on the capabilities of our dogs, and just when they're there as well, they'll talk to the students about some issues and when to call for help, things like that, not to talk to strangers, those types of things, as well as talking about the dangers of either drugs if it's one of our drug dogs, or firearms if it's one of our firearm dogs.
Mr. Chair, may I? Thank you. And it may piggyback off of a question Senator Neal asked. In the numbers, can we get numbers on like the ages or the grades or ages of the students that you're finding that have the firearms, just to get a better picture of where it is? It's great to start early with the elementary school kids. I'm thinking that maybe it's happening across the board, but is it more teenagers? And the preventive is great. Sort of in the intervention space, I'd like to, hear more how the officers work with those kids who are actually found to be possessing the firearms.
We can go into that, how our officers are working with the students in possession of firearms. So we hired social workers. This is I think it's our 4th year. It started with 1, and we call them police social workers for things like this, things that we know as officers that we can't fix, but there needs to be some other services provided to the family or to the juvenile or the whole situation that the juvenile is involved in. So we currently now have 8 police social workers, and as far as their clients or their calls for service, it's going to total on the trend right now about 1,300 different calls for service for our social workers throughout this school year, providing assistance and guidance to the families, the students, for incidents happening either in the school, at home, that have a nexus back to our campuses and their school life.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions in Las Vegas? Seeing none, do we have any questions from our folk in Northern Nevada?
None here, sir.
Thank you.
No.
Senator Grazer?
No, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And thank you both for joining us. And we're hoping to just continue the dialogue and working together. Thank you for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will move on to the next presentation on the agenda, which is a representative of the Nevada Firearm Coalition Political Action Committee. And I do see you in Carson City. Welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Randy Thompson, representing the Nevada Firearms Coalition, RENDI-THOMPSON. SB 156 would have created the Office of Prevention of Gun Violence within the Office of Attorney General. It was amended during the 25 session to appoint a special counsel for the prevention of gun violence. The bill passed both houses along party lines in the 25 session and was vetoed by the governor. In a statement, the governor said, because SB 156 injects too much political influence into an issue that demands careful, sensitive, impartial treatment, I cannot support it. We concur with the governor's assessment. As the governor stated in his veto message, by granting this office broad authority over data collection, policy advising, and grant distribution, the bill opens the door to selective, interpretive, and ideological influence over firearms policy. Additionally, his statement said the absence of clearly defined limits of the special counsel's role raises the risk of unchecked expansion and administrative overreach in shaping gun-related policy. A more neutral, public health-oriented agency would be better suited to lead such efforts without the risk of politicization. Preserving public trust and constitutional rights requires that we address gun violence through nonpartisan, balanced means. That is why we remain opposed to SB 156. Although I did appreciate the comments from the young men today, and I applaud their courage for coming up and offering what they feel is a good solution. 12 states, actually 13 I see in the chart, have created a gun violence prevention office. Yet only one state, California, has seen any kind of reduction in gun violence though it's impossible to prove that that office had anything to do with it. I want to emphasize something important. As Senator Neal already said, the Nevada Firearms Coalition shares the goal of reducing violence in our communities. We want fewer Nevadans harmed by crime, and we are committed to working with this body on policies that meaningfully reduce the misuse of firearms and keep guns out of the hands of criminals. We have supported legislation to increase penalties for crimes when firearms were used maliciously, such as SB 274 in the 2019 session. Senator Canizaro actually sponsored a bill for us a few sessions ago that would have increased jail time for prohibited possessors who used guns in crimes. Unfortunately, that bill never made it out of committee. Captain Martinez talked about AB 199, and that's something we would like to support working with him on next session. We have worked on legislation related to gun safe storage, and we have advocated removing the sales tax on gun safes in order to encourage responsible gun storage practices. We have proposed bills to allow students who want to protect themselves on college campuses and to allow firearms to be securely stowed in locked vehicles on school property. While we might not always agree on policy approaches, we remain committed to constructive engagement on issues that improve safety. But looking at the broader data, as I think both Clark and Washoe County presented today, National trends indicate that gun violence has declined in recent years. Everytown research and the FBI data show assault-related gun deaths and injuries are declining. Annual gun homicides decreased by 7% in 22, 13% in 23, and 26% in the first quarter of 24. Public mass shootings understandably receive significant attention and concern, but they represent a very small share of overall gun-related homicides. A U.S. Department of Justice analysis under President Obama and the Congressional Research Service found that mass shootings account for less than 1% of gun homicides in the United States since 2010. While I don't want to downplay violence related to guns, more Nevadans die in car accidents than are killed in a homicide by a gun. The most recent data showed that in 2022, there were 416 traffic fatalities, but there were 160 homicides by guns. But again, that does not include suicides. More than half of all firearm deaths in Nevada and in the United States are suicides, which underscores the importance of mental health and preventative efforts. While gun incidents attract a lot of media attention, the reality is violence is violence. To target one type of violence is to ignore that we need to focus on preventing violence in general, and mental health in particular. Guns are inanimate objects, just like cars, knives, baseball bats, and semi-trucks. When used properly, none of these cause harm. Yet in the hands of those who want to do harm, they can be deadly. Yet when a drunk driver kills a person, we blame the driver. But when a gun kills someone, we blame the gun. And ultimately, violence is a complex social problem. Firearms are one tool that can be misused, but addressing violence effectively requires attention to mental health, crime prevention, community safety, and enforcement against those who illegally possess weapons. We support reducing violence in Nevada, but creating this office or position has not proven to work in other states, and we don't think it's the right step for Nevada. But that doesn't mean we don't want to help. The Second Amendment protects citizens' ability to legally possess firearms, but with that right comes responsibilities. That is why the Nevada Firearms Coalition, the NRA, and many other organizations that fight to protect the constitutional right to legally bear arms have a plethora of programs that are designed to teach people how to responsibly and safely use and store firearms. There are programs on how to safely store guns in your home and car, as theft of firearms from homes and cars is a leading cause of illegal firearms. There are many hunter safety programs and concealed carry courses that millions of Americans take each year. Protecting children from accessing firearms is another issue we take very seriously. Eddie Eagle is an NRA program that provides pre-K through fourth graders to learn the steps to take when they find a gun. Stop, don't touch, run away, and tell a grown-up. That NRA program has educated over 35 million children since the program started in the 1980s. NRA's Home Fire Safety course is a non-shooting course and teaches students the basic knowledge, skills, and to explain the attitude necessary for the safe handling and storage of firearms and ammunition at home. NRA's Refuse to Be a Victim is an award-winning non-firearm personal safety seminar teaching proactive crime prevention, situational awareness, and risk reduction techniques. Open to all ages, it helps annually over 170,000 people develop personal safety strategies for home, travel, and cybersecurity. The Nevada Firearms Coalition offers the Annie Oakley Women's Program, a free program for women who want to learn to safely and effectively use guns for self-protection. This weekly class has trained thousands of women in the Las Vegas Valley. While we are advocates for a strong concealed carry program, over 22 million Americans have a concealed carry. I'm one of them. My husband and I own firearms for the simple reason that we do live in a dangerous world, and we have the right to defend ourselves and our home. In the last few years, women have increasingly become concealed carry permit holders as Black Americans. In fact, it appears to be that group has experienced the largest increase in concealed carry, growing 321% more than the whites. Permit holders are generally law-abiding citizens. FBI data shows that armed civilians, including concealed carry permit holders, have stopped a small number of active shooter incidents. demonstrating that responsible firearm ownership can sometimes play a role in personal defense and in saving lives. FBI data confirmed that armed civilians, including those carriers, have stopped several active shooters, roughly 5%, but still, those are lives saved by civilians who have taken the time to learn how to use guns. But unfortunately, bad guys don't get CCWs. They don't buy guns from gun stores because they won't pass a background check. About 90% of criminals who use a gun in a crime did not obtain it from a retail store. The underground market and theft are common sources of guns. Criminal access to guns often happens outside legal channels, which is why enforcement against criminal misuse of firearms is more critical. Violence is a complex problem, and a few policy changes won't solve it. That is why we should focus on solutions that target criminals, promote responsible ownership, and address the root cause of violence. The Nevada Firearms Coalition believes we can work together on policies that focus on criminals, promote responsible ownership, and improve safety in our community. While we respectfully oppose SB 156, we remain committed to working with the members of this body on solutions that can genuinely reduce violence in Nevada. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And thank you, Ms. Thompson, for joining us today. Members, any questions? Either in Carson City or Las Vegas.
None here, thanks.
Seeing none, Ms. Thompson, I think what I'm going to do for purposes of moving the conversation forward, if it's okay with you, I'd like to share your contact information to the students to allow for the conversations to kind of continue offline and maybe come up with some ideas of what you've seen in other states that you think can hit the issues that they're addressing in a way that it kind of fulfills that their hunger to have a bipartisan effort here.
I would welcome
so
that, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's doable, and I'll make sure they reach out.
Yes, and I think there are ways to
I
look
think
at this office. I think there are ways to look maybe in HHS or something like that. But I would love to chat with these young men. And like to encourage their participation. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We do have one question for you, Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. This is really quick. So, in your document, you cited to that there was a 328% increase in blacks carrying concealed weapons. But what was the reason to insert that into the document? What position are you using that data to propose that we understand about that increased usage?
I think it, for the record, Randy Thompson, I think it just shows, actually after COVID in 2021, there was a huge increase of Asians getting CCWs. And we know part of that reason was there was such crime against Asians because of the China connection to COVID. So I was just using that as just statistics, that it's not white males just getting guns. It's women, it's blacks, it's Hispanics, and it's Asians. It's all sectors of our population are looking at getting concealed carry weapons.
Okay, because I just wanted to see, just like your example with the Asian community, is it because of increased racial violence that has been going on in America, where, pretty much an unarmed black man is being shot down in the street just for jogging?
I'm, for the record, Randy Thompson, I'm not going to say anything else except that I've known just specifically the COVID response was one of those actions. Maybe the Black Lives Matter made more people want to protect themselves, but that's just purely my guessing.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you. I don't believe we have any other questions for you, but please know, I'll have them text you first, Ms. Thompson, just so you know it's them reaching out.
Yeah, sure.
And then hopefully set up a couple of conversations and just continue to build on the dialogue today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So with that, we will close out her presentation and we will go to the final public comment. For those wishing to join us for public comment, either in Carson City or Las Vegas, I do see our former commissioner coming up. We had a very lengthy discussion, and I think you were ready to answer some of these questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris June Kiliani. In 2007, when I first got elected to the county commission, I started out, I think my salary is around 68,000. And I don't know, I think they adopted a schedule in the legislature that year that certain bumps went up. I had 1.5 staff, not just myself, the other commissioners did as well. And we had between 10 and 12,000 a year for us to use for mailings for town halls, neighborhood cleanups, those types of things. Since COVID, I believe Clark County, and they may be higher, I think Assemblywoman Flanagan was correct, was around 125,000 per person. They also then have been using redevelopment money, which the only redevelopment area was in my district. And when Sahara Hotel closed, it stopped any funding coming in for redevelopment, so we had no money. Now they do purchase buildings for things. And so there is funding when they find what they want to use it for. To me, the crux of this issue comes down to conflicts of interest. I wrote that all commissioners had to have a 1-year cooling off period. They weren't happy with me, but I did get that ordinance passed. I did require that lobbyists had to register. We never even had lobbyist registration or anything along those lines. There's still things that need to be done. If you want to spend the time, it is a full-time job. I was on probably 15 different committees, but they were important policy making. And so you can't just go in and vote and then leave. And that's unfortunately what happens with some. The peacock feathers need to have a guardrail a little bit on them, I think, in the long run, because by making it full-time, they know ahead of time, you can give them proper notice, but dedicated to know what fiscal affairs means and the history of the more cops tax and where the funding is coming in. What happens is they rely on staff and nobody ever knows the history. And if you don't know the history, you don't know what you're trying to fix or to amend or to change or to make into better policy. So I think the full-time component is, to me, the crux of what came out of 116. I don't know that they need 5% increases over the years. I mean, think of what you do with employees. They're mostly around a COLA if you're going to restrict anything. But to me, deeming it a full-time position forces in their mind, at least, that I have to show up and do more than just come in and do drive-by voting. And so it may not fix everything, but I think we've grown large enough. They're making decent wages now that you can call that attitude and that ability for them to come in and do the more work, more intensive policy work. It kind of helps to framework that. You can't mandate good job work ethic. I wish you could, but you can't. But if you put some restrictions in or some policies in that say, this is what I think you ought to at least be focusing your time on, then it makes it a better outcome for their constituents in the long run. So I wanted to just kind of hang around and answer any of those questions. But I do think in going from the legislature to a commission, I think I'm one of the few that ever did that. I had a better perspective, I think, in the long run. And I think Maryland does as well. We were more policy oriented rather than just how the boys did it for the years before. The conflict of interest that come into play, we had several attorneys, no disrespect, Mr. Chair, but they had colleagues. And sometimes we didn't all know the interconnections. There was one that used to rub his nose. And if he did that, that was supposed to be the signal to the other commissioners on how to vote on something. There was games that were played. You're not going to fix that. But again, if you get to go in and really work together in a more collaborative policy mode, you tend to break some of those barriers down to some extent. I don't think you should be a real estate agent and serve on the county commission as a planner because you're voting on zoning stuff. I don't know if you're selling homes in that district or you're working with those developers. So it just helps to minimize and whittle down some of what they're doing in the long run. It's like with planning commissioners. I thought I'd put in statute that they had to file financial disclosures so we knew who was lobbying them. And I was told that went away sometime or another. There's things that help make the policy better for local government. Maybe those could be some things that are looked at again, and making sure that developers don't serve on a planning commission, but that you at least know that they have to report who they're being talked to and lobbied by. I know one of our assemblymen had the privilege and did a good job as a planning commissioner and could probably send more to that. but it's what I have seen over the years. So I just wanted to offer some of those comments. Thank you.
And thank you for saying to the
My
end
pleasure.
to help us. I do appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll continue to dialogue and reach out to you. So thank you again for joining us. Is there anybody else wishing to come forward? I see nobody in Carson City or Las Vegas. We will go to the phone lines. Anybody wishing to join us for public comment over the phone?
If you would like to provide public comment, please press *9 to take your place in the queue. Again, if you wish to provide public comment, please press *9. Caller, please press *6 to unmute. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jean Coquilla, Coquilla, a Nevada resident. Thank you for your public service. Please let me know if I'm audible.
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Nevada has approximately 55,000 residents with Alzheimer's disease and about 219,000 veterans. Many of these individuals live in the roughly 3,900 HOA communities across the state. Between 2020 and 2025, the approximately 29,000 HOA notices of default were recorded in Clark County alone. Current law under NRS 116 does not require documented acknowledgement of payment or compliance before enforcement escalation, such as recording a notice of default. In one instance, an 89-year-old veteran lost his home after sending checks to his HOA, highlighting how communication breakdowns can escalate into serious consequences. For seniors experiencing cognitive decline, veterans managing service-related disabilities, or caregivers coordinating finances, communication breakdowns can allow small misunderstandings to escalate into enforcement actions that place home equity at risk. California, Florida, Texas, Colorado, Utah, Maryland, Washington, North Carolina, Minnesota, Arizona have passed reforms or are in the process of passing reforms to the HOA laws to improve transparency and notice procedures in HOA enforcement. And it's not a request to weaken HOA authority. It's a request to consider simple procedural communication safeguards and does not require appropriations. I respectfully ask the committee to consider reviewing this issue in a future policy discussion. Written materials have been submitted, and I'd be happy to provide any additional information. Thank you for your time and consideration.
And thank you for joining us this evening and waiting to the very end. We do appreciate you. Next caller, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have no additional callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. And members, before we adjourn, I thank everybody for the thoughtful dialogue today. Please, as we continue to get our agendas squared away, please make recommendations so that we can hit topics that are important to you. We are hoping to meet again next month, April 2nd. However, please just make sure that you watch your email so that we can keep everybody informed in the committee as we put that agenda together for everybody. But for now, we are aiming for April 2nd. And thank you, everybody, again. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.